Girl, look at that moon. It's a gorgeous night. But for Blair, it's the start of a total nightmare. She's standing in this massive, cold hallway, heart pounding, because tonight isn't just any night, it's her wedding night. And honestly, she looks like she's heading to her own execution. She finally works up the courage to open those heavy doors. The room is empty. Typical. Her new husband is nowhere to be found, and the silence is deafening. She sits on the edge of that huge bed, wondering if he's even going to show up, or if he's already avoiding her. She remembers how it used to be, or how she thought it was. The warmth, the hugs, all just a beautiful lie. Instead of waiting around, she sits at her desk. She's got a mission, and it's not about romance. Her hands are shaking as she writes, but she has to stay focused on the only thing that matters. Her son, her sweet little Aziel. In her past life, he was her entire world. Just thinking about him brings her to tears. She'd do anything to see those tiny hands again. That's when the look in her eyes changes. She's not a victim anymore. She's a woman with a plan. She goes back to writing. She needs to conceive Aziel, and for that, she needs the Duke. Suddenly, there are footsteps, heavy, confident, and coming right for her. Speak of the devil. Duke Hurden appears out of thin air, looking way too handsome for a man who's about to break her heart. Blair jumps out of her skin. She definitely didn't expect him to actually show up tonight. He's acting like it's no big deal, reminding her that it is, in fact, their wedding night. Like, okay, Mr. Cold and Calculated. Then he gets close, way too close, and asks if she was really waiting for him all this time. His eyes are so intense, it's hard to remember that this man might have been the reason she died in her past life. When he reaches out to touch her face, Blair completely freezes. Her body remembers his touch, even if her heart is guarded. He tilts her chin up, and the tension in the room is off the charts. He leans in, and for a second, it looks like a fairy tale. But Blair knows better than anyone that this is a horror story. Her eyes stay wide open. She can't let herself get swept away by the moment. He kisses her, but her mind is screaming. This isn't love. It's just a means to an end. She feels the warmth of his embrace, the very thing that fooled her once before. But she's holding on tight, reminding herself why she's even doing this. She won't be fooled by his warmth again. She knows exactly who this man is. Her gaze is ice cold. She's using him, just like the world used her. As she falls back onto the bed, she lets out a shaky breath. This is it. She grips the sheets, bracing herself for the night ahead. She closes her eyes and pictures her baby. This is all for you, Aziel. She's willing to endure anything, even the man who might have killed her, to bring her son back. Hurden looks down at her, and honestly, the man is a total smoke show, which makes this whole thing so much harder. Let's rewind to 2 years before all this regression drama started. The palace was buried in snow. Hurden was already planning his escape, heading out to the carriage without a second thought. The wheels were turning, and so was Blair's life, spiraling out of control. She ran after him, calling his name, desperate for just a moment of his time. She was so far along in her pregnancy back then, looking vulnerable and so tired. He didn't even touch her. He just looked at her like she was some stranger who happened to be carrying his heir. She told him it had been 6 months since she'd seen him. Can you imagine? Half a year. He didn't even blink. His face was like stone, totally unmoved by her sadness. She was literally sweating from the stress, trying to find the words to make him stay. The palace looked like a frozen prison, and that's exactly how Blair felt inside. They ended up sitting across from each other in the carriage, the air between them colder than the snow outside. She had so much to tell him, so many feelings, but every time she looked at him, her mind just went blank. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain. The baby was kicking, and it was intense. She tried to make it a moment, telling him the baby recognized his father. And what does he do? He just stares out the window. Talk about a cold shoulder. She tried to play it off, saying she was fine, but the rejection was written all over her face. She whispered that she understood, but it was the sound of a heart breaking in real time. The snow kept falling, burying any hope she had of a happy family. He didn't even help her out. He just said he was on his way and walked off. He told her to have a safe delivery, like he was talking to a distant relative, not his wife. He didn't even look back as he boarded his own carriage to leave her again. His eyes were fixed on the distance. He had zero interest in the life they were creating together. Right then, she asked him to name the baby. If it's a girl, Diana. If it's a boy, Azil. He just shrugged and said he'd go with those names. He couldn't even be bothered to choose a name himself. But back then, Blair was so desperate for crumbs of affection that she actually smiled. She watched him leave, thinking he was going to save the world, but he was really just running away from her. Everyone knew him as the legendary magic swordsman, the hero of the continent, a literal war hero blessed by a divine beast, the golden boy of the empire. And then there was her, Blair Delmark, the imperial princess who was basically just a trophy. He left for the main castle the moment she got pregnant, leaving her to deal with everything alone. He claimed he was going to fight monsters, but Blair knew the truth. It was all just a pathetic excuse to avoid being in the same room as her. Their marriage was just politics. No love, no passion, just a deal signed in blood. Their families hated each other, and Blair was the one caught in the crossfire of all that bad blood. She knew he resented her for who she was, but she still hoped for more. She was so scared and so incredibly lonely in that massive, empty estate. And the worst part? He never came back, not even when she was in labor. When he finally did return 6 months later, Blair was holding their son, hoping for a reunion. But he didn't come back alone. He had a mysterious, silver-haired woman on his arm. Talk about a knife to the heart. Girl, the entire mansion is in a total frenzy. The maids are literally running through the halls because the big boss is finally making his grand entrance. His Excellency is almost here. After being gone for what feels like forever, the man of the house is finally coming home. You can see the nerves all over her face. She's been waiting so long for this moment, just hoping that today is the day everything finally changes for the better. And look at little Aziel. She's telling him his daddy is home and asking if they should go greet him together. My heart is actually breaking for her right now. I mean, look at those big blue eyes. This poor baby has never even met his father because the guy has been stuck up north for the last 6 months. She's so hyped. She thinks this is the fresh start they need, telling the baby it's the first time he'll see his dad since he was in her tummy. But deep down, she's haunted. Herden didn't even show up for the moment Aziel was born. She's convinced he still resents her for something. Can you imagine spending every single night alone, awake in tears, while your husband is miles away, essentially ghosting his own family? But she is trying so hard to stay strong. She wants to believe that he can't hold a grudge forever, especially now that they have a child together. The carriage is pulling up, and she's looking out the window like, okay, this is it. He has to love us now. We share a life. She really wants to build a proper family, even if they're starting late. She thinks Aziel is the bridge that's going to bring them back together. She became a mother, he became a father. She's clinging to the idea that these new roles will finally bind them as a real couple. She's doing it all for the sake of her lovely child. She's convinced that once Herden sees how much the baby looks like him, his heart will finally melt. She's walking down those grand halls with so much hope, thinking, your father will surely understand once he sees you. But then she looks down from the balcony and her whole world just stops. Something is very, very wrong with this picture. He's back after a year, but he didn't come alone. He brought another woman. And girl, they are looking way too comfortable together. The servants are already losing it. Everyone is asking, who is that? And why did they ride in the same carriage? The tea is officially scalding. That woman, her name is Miela Elias, and the look on our girl's face is pure, unadulterated devastation. Hurden starts giving this whole professional speech about how she's a priestess who saved his knights from demonic beasts up north. Apparently, she's some brilliant talent, and he hired her to assist with the monsters. Sure, Jan, whatever you say to justify this. He claims she'll continue to serve him with utmost trust. But we all know how this storyline goes, right? It's never just professional. The maids are already calling it out. They're staying at the mansion together? Something is definitely going on behind closed doors. They're whispering that it's obvious Lady Miela likes him. I mean, the way she looks at him, that is not just a work look. And they're always together. The gossip is that it's only a matter of time before the Duke falls for her, too. It's like the madam doesn't even exist. And the worst part? People are actually saying Miela is a better match for him because our girl is the enemy's daughter. The absolute audacity! She's trying to ignore the rumors, but it's eating her alive. If she shows any reaction, she's basically admitting they might be true. Time is just flying by in the most miserable way. The suffocating summer passes, then autumn, and the coldness in that house just keeps growing. Winter returns, and the atmosphere is just as bleak as the snow outside. It's like the whole place is frozen in a state of sadness. Hurden is always busy with work. He never seeks her out. He hasn't even tried to be a husband or a father since he got back. She tried to mend things, she really did. But after being rejected over and over, she just stopped trying. It's too painful to keep begging for crumbs. The only relief she had was that he occasionally showed some interest in Aziel. That tiny, faint glimmer of hope was all she had left to bet on. So she decides to make one last move. She's going to ask him for one simple thing, just for the baby's sake, one last time. Aziel's first birthday is in 15 days. She thinks maybe, just maybe, he'll agree to spend some family time together at the villa for the big day. She's walking toward his office, rehearsing the words in her head, her heart pounding like it's about to jump out of her chest. She's literally praying he says yes. This is her final attempt to save whatever is left of this marriage for her son's future. She gets to the office and realizes the door is actually open. She's about to step in when she sees something that ruins every hope she ever had. Her eyes go wide. Her heart just drops into her stomach. She can't believe what she's seeing right now. It's actually happening. She's frozen. She wants to turn away. She wants to scream, but she's paralyzed by the betrayal happening right in front of her. She sees them. Her husband, that woman. It's exactly what the rumors said, and seeing it is a million times worse. They're right there, in his office, holding each other like she doesn't even exist. The level of disrespect is actually insane. Her Don looks so indifferent, while Miela is clinging to him. He doesn't even look like he's being forced. He's just there with her. And Miela, she's right where she wanted to be, taking the place that should belong to the Duchess. She looks so smug. Our girl is just shattered. To see it with her own eyes, there's no coming back from this. The trust is officially dead. She hears them talking, and every word is like a fresh dagger to the heart. The betrayal is complete and total. And then he kisses her. He actually kisses her. I am screaming. How could he do this while his wife and child are in the same building? Miela says it feels like a dream and tells him she loves him. Girl, get a grip. That is a married man with a baby. Madame can't take another second of it. She turns and bolts, her world completely falling apart as she runs through the dark halls. She's running from the truth, running from the pain, but those words, "I love you," are just chasing her down like a nightmare. A few days later, on the actual birthday, a maid comes in with the worst news. Hurden's schedule is delayed. He's not coming to his son's first birthday. So Aziel has a modest but happy first birthday without his father. The servants are trying their best to make it special, but it's so sad. They're eating delicious food and clapping, trying to keep the mood up for the little guy, but everyone knows the Duke is a total no-show. There are tons of gifts from the retainers, but not a single thing from the one person who should actually be there for him. Aziel is just a baby, so he's smiling and playing with the ribbons, totally unaware that his dad is basically abandoning him for another woman. But Madame, she's looking out that window, just empty. It was a perfect birthday, except for the fact that Hurden chose his mistress over his son. She's holding him so tight, trying to be enough for him, but she's literally drowning in her own grief and regret. She tells him how beautiful and adorable he was today, trying to keep the vibes positive as she puts him to bed. "It's time for sleep, little one." She's whispering sweet things, but you can hear her voice cracking with every single word. He's drifting off, finally peaceful after a long day of being the center of attention. He's so innocent in all of this. But then he looks up and asks for his dad. My heart. He doesn't even know that his Abu doesn't care enough to show up. She's been waiting all day, hoping Hurden would at least show up for 5 minutes before the day ended. But the clock has run out. The realization is finally setting in. He really isn't coming. He's probably with her right now, while his son is asking for him. She tells Aziel not to worry, that his father will definitely come before the day is over. She's lying to her baby just to keep his world from breaking. She tells him to have sweet dreams, acting like everything is fine while her entire soul is screaming in agony. The first tear finally falls. She can't keep the mask on anymore. The pain of being neglected like this is just too much to hold back. She stands there in the silence of the room, realizing she's completely and utterly alone in this marriage. Aziel doesn't know anything. He's just a baby who deserves all the love in the world, and his father can't even give him one day. She's sobbing now. Why did she love such a heartless man? Why did she waste years of her life on someone who treats her like trash? She collapses on the floor, just a mess of white silk and tears. He shouldn't have neglected Aziel. That's the line he shouldn't have crossed. She's literally gasping for air, the regret hitting her like a freight train. If she could go back in time, she'd never love him. Never. Suddenly, she hears footsteps. Her head snaps up. Is it him? Did Hurden actually come back at the very last second? She looks up, half hoping, half terrified. "Hurden?" she whispers, her voice trembling with the last bit of hope she has left. But it's not her husband. It's a man with a knife. Oh my God, an assassin? Right now? This girl literally can't catch a break. The night was deathly quiet, but that peace was about to be shattered in the most terrifying way possible. A sudden crash. My heart stopped. Someone was in the house, and they weren't here to talk. Panic surged through me. My first thought? Hurden. No, this couldn't be happening now. A dark figure loomed in the doorway, a literal nightmare coming to life right before my eyes. He was looking for Aziel. I could feel it. I had to protect my baby no matter the cost. I reached for the bell rope with everything I had. Help! Please, someone, just help me! The bells started clanging downstairs, echoing through the silent halls of the estate. The maids jumped. A call from the madam's room? At this hour? They knew it was bad news. The wall of bells was dancing, but one in particular was ringing like it was possessed. It sounded frantic, desperate, not just a request for tea, but a scream for mercy. The staff stood frozen for a second, the sheer terror of that sound sinking into their bones. Back in the room, I was white-knuckling that rope, praying the guards would hear me in time. But then, pain. A sharp, cold sting that drained the air right out of my lungs. I looked down to see a blade. He actually did it. He stabbed me. The guards were coming. I could hear them running, but it felt like they were a world away. The assassin didn't even flinch. He was a professional, and I was just his latest target. Everything started to blur. The room was spinning, and the floor was suddenly coming up to meet me. I was gasping for air, my vision fading into darkness. Is this really how it ends? At least Aziel wasn't in here. At least he was safe in the nursery. That was my only comfort. But the thought of leaving him alone broke what was left of my heart. I can't die like this. My poor baby. He just found me. He just started to know his mother. It's not fair. The voices of the staff were getting louder, but their faces were just shadows in the dark. I collapsed onto the cold floor, the blood pooling around me. There was so much I still wanted to do. My eyes fluttered shut for the last time. Goodbye, my sweet Aziel. I'm so sorry. Then, something impossible happened. A flash of light, the sound of glass shattering, and time itself seemed to snap. I gasped, my eyes flying open. I was breathing? I was alive? I bolted upright, screaming my son's name. Aziel, where is he? I checked my body, trembling. There was no wound, no blood, no pain. Was it all a nightmare? But my hands? They were clean. My skin was perfect. I was definitely supposed to be dead. I looked around the room, and my jaw dropped. This wasn't my bedroom at the estate. The door opened, and a familiar face walked in. Lena? But she looked younger? I begged her to tell me where Aziel was, but she just looked at me with total confusion. She asked if I was talking about a stray cat? A cat? Aziel is my son. I was losing my mind. This wasn't a joke. I needed to see my baby right now. That's when the dissonance hit me. The air, the light, the smell of the room, it was all wrong. I looked up at the ceiling. This was the Imperial Palace. I hadn't lived here in years. Lena was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. She called me Your Highness, not Madam. Why would she call me that? I was a duchess. Unless... Oh God, what was happening? She told me I wasn't even married yet, that I couldn't possibly have a son. My blood ran cold. I grabbed her and asked the only question that mattered. Lena, exactly how old am I? 20, she said. I was 20. That meant I'd traveled back 3 years into the past. I stepped out into the palace, and it was like walking through a memory I'd already lived. Everything was exactly as it was before Aziel was ever born, before the tragedy. I was back at the family dinner table, surrounded by the very people who used me as a pawn. I saw myself in the mirror, a younger, more naive version of me. Was it all a dream, or am I reliving my life? I felt a deep chill. If this was real, then Aziel didn't exist yet. My heart felt hollow. Someone was calling my name. Blair! Blair! I snapped back to the present, or rather, the past. The maid whispered that the Empress Dowager was waiting for me to speak. I had to play along. Lena looked worried. I must have been spacing out for a while, lost in the horror of my own memories. There she was, Katrina Ardell, the Empress Dowager, cold, calculating, and as beautiful as a poisonous flower. And the Emperor, Ivan, he sat there sipping wine like he didn't have a care in the world. He was cutting into his steak with such precision, it made my skin crawl. He asked me what I was saying. Then he said it, the words that changed my life forever. He was talking about my marriage to the Duke. He told me to be prepared so there would be no issues, like I was just another item on his to-do list. The discussion was already over, apparently. He was handing me over like a prize horse.
He told me not to pout over losing my freedom. He expected me to be a good princess and obey. All the memories I'd buried came flooding back. The anger, the helplessness, the feeling of being trapped. In the past, this was the moment I fought back. I refused to marry Herden. I chose my own path. I had stood my ground for the first time in my life, thinking I was being brave. But looking at them now, I realized that my rebellion was exactly what led to my misery later. So I opened my mouth and said the one thing they never expected to hear. I'll do it. I'll marry him. The look of shock on their faces was almost worth it. I'll obey the emperor's will. This time, I'm playing a different game entirely. My mind was racing. Was I dreaming because I died? Or was this a second chance at life?
But every time I replayed the feeling of Azil's small hands in mine, I knew the truth. This isn't a dream. It's too real. The warmth of his skin, the sound of his laugh, it's all still so vivid. I could still feel him in my arms, and the thought of him not existing was a pain worse than death. This moment felt so hollow without him. I was a mother with no child, a queen with no kingdom. Azil was my hope. He was my entire life. I couldn't just let him vanish into a timeline that didn't happen. If I return to the past, then a reality without him is just a living hell I won't accept. So for me in this life, there's only one path. I must marry Herden no matter what, because that's the only way to get my son back. Blair is on a mission, y'all. She is willing to go through absolutely anything just to see Aziel again. Her heart is set and she's not looking back. Even if it means living through a miserable, lonely marriage for a second time, she's all in. If that's the price for her goal, she'll pay it without hesitation. She starts getting ready, and you can just tell something big is brewing in that head of hers. The stakes are high, and the game is about to begin. She tells her maid, Lena, to send a message to the Delmark Duchy immediately. She needs a meeting, and she needs it now. Lena is literally shaking. Like, girl, are you serious right now? You want to meet the Duke? The drama is already off the charts. Blair is just cool as a cucumber, acting like it's no big deal. She asks why Lena looks so shocked, but we all know why. Lena heads out to follow orders, but her mind is spinning. This is totally out of character for the princess, and everyone knows it. She's thinking about how much Blair used to avoid the Duke like the plague. They were basically enemies in another life. At the last banquet, Blair wouldn't even look in his direction. There was zero vibe, just cold shoulders and awkward silence. See, the history between these two families is messy, like super messy. There's a whole lot of bad blood and secrets buried here. Everyone in the palace knows the princess reaching out to a Delmark is basically unheard of. It's like a declaration of war or a desperate plea. To understand the drama, we gotta go back to the late emperor and his two women. This is where the real tea starts spilling. First, you had the legal wife and empress, Esmeralda. Classy, beautiful, but she had no children for years, which was a huge problem. Then came the imperial concubine, Katrina. She was the other woman brought in for one job, and she was clearly ready for the spotlight. Since the empress couldn't have kids, Katrina was brought in as a concubine. The power dynamics shifted the moment she stepped into the palace. Katrina was a gypsy with zero political power or influence, but she was determined to make her mark on the imperial family. She gave birth to a son, Ivan, and things started changing fast. Suddenly, she had the leverage she needed to climb the social ladder. As soon as she had that heir, everyone wanting a piece of the throne started sucking up to her. The political snakes were out in full force. The rivalry between Esmeralda and Katrina turned into a full-on political war zone. It wasn't just about love anymore, it was about survival. And right in the middle of all this chaos was a little girl named Blair. She was caught between two powerful women who hated each other.
You'd think the Empress would hate her rival's daughter, right? That's usually how these stories go, but wait until you hear this. But surprisingly, that wasn't the case at all. There was a connection there that no one saw coming, and it changed everything. Esmeralda actually adored Blair. She cherished the daughter of her political rival, which was honestly the biggest plot twist of the era. But then, the incident happened, a massive fire that changed the course of history and left the palace in ruins. The Empress's palace went up in flames. It was absolutely devastating, and the smoke could be seen for miles. The Empress didn't make it. Blair was with her and was severely injured. The trauma was so bad that she lost all her memories of that night, just a total blank. The Emperor went on a total rampage trying to find out who tried to kill his daughter. He wanted heads on pikes, and he wanted them now. And guess what? All the evidence pointed straight back to the dead Empress, Esmeralda. Talk about a cold-blooded accusation. Her birth family, the Delmarks, were screaming that it was a setup, but nobody was listening. The political tide had already turned against them. In the end, Esmeralda was buried as a traitor to the crown, a total injustice for a woman who might have been innocent all along. Back in the present, a knock comes at the Duke's door. The message has finally arrived, and you can feel the tension in the air. The messenger tells him there's a letter from the Ardell imperial family. The room goes silent. This is a moment no one expected.
And that brings us to our guy, Duke Herden Delmark, Esmeralda's only nephew. He's got that brooding, dangerous energy we all love. Back at the palace, Lena is still worried sick. She knows Blair was the victim in that fire, so why would she ever welcome this marriage? She thinks there's no way Blair would want to be part of the family that allegedly tried to kill her. It just doesn't make any sense. But somehow, Blair is acting like it's the best day of her life. She's practically glowing, and it's honestly a little eerie. She looks gorgeous, but there's a look in her eyes that says she's playing a very dangerous game. She's got a plan, and she's sticking to it. Meanwhile, the Duke's side is just as salty about this whole thing. They think the Emperor is being completely shameless with this proposal. His aide, Ruth, is fuming. He's ranting about how the Emperor celebrated while the Delmark family was failing. Talk about a grudge. Herden just sits there, looking like a literal god, soaking in all the bitterness. He's calm, but you can tell he's calculating his next move. Ruth is worried the Emperor is just trying to absorb the Duke's influence now that he's a war hero. He's not wrong, honestly. They pull up to the palace, and the tension is high enough to cut with a knife. This meeting is going to be legendary. I can feel it. Ruth is still grumbling under his breath as they prepare to step inside. He really doesn't want to be here, and he's not hiding it. He thinks the princess is just getting lucky landing the Empire's finest groom without lifting a finger. If only he knew the truth. Little does he know, Blair is the one running this show now. She's walking into this with her head held high and a secret in her pocket. Lena watches her, realizing that the old Blair who ran away is gone. This version is sharp, determined, and maybe a little scary. Blair is locked in. She's focused on one goal and one goal only, and she's not going to let anyone stand in her way. She needs this marriage to go off without a single hitch. Herden has to become her husband, no matter what it takes. The doors open, and there he is, Duke Herden, looking as intimidating and handsome as ever. The room's temperature just dropped 10 degrees. Blair reminds herself that she cannot let him slip through her fingers. She needs him for her plan to work, and she's ready to fight for it. She puts on her best princess face and prepares for the confrontation. It's showtime, and she's not going to miss her mark. She thanks him for making time, keeping it polite but firm. She's showing him that she's not the same girl he used to know. He bows and kisses her hand, but it's more like a challenge than a greeting. The sparks are flying, but they're definitely not the romantic kind. The air in the room is thick. They both know this isn't just a social visit. There's a deal on the table, and it's time to talk. Blair decides to drop the act and get right to the point. No more games, no more dancing around the subject. It's time for the truth. She tells him straight up she's not going to refuse the marriage proposal. She's accepting her fate, but on her own terms. He's like, yeah, figured. It's hard to say no to an emperor's command. He thinks he knows her motive, but he's so wrong. But then she drops the conditions. 1 year, she says. Just 1 year of marriage. Now that's a contract I can get behind. She promises to divorce him after a year and take all the public blame. She's offering him freedom and a clean reputation. She even promises she won't bother him with trivial things like love. Ouch, that's cold, but it's exactly what he wants to hear. Herden looks intrigued, but he needs a real reason to agree to this. Why should he trust the daughter of the man who ruined his family? And that's when she gives him the real offer, the one he can't refuse. She's got the leverage, and she's using it. She promises to help him uncover the real truth about that palace fire from 10 years ago. Now she's speaking his language. Herden lets out this dark, chilling laugh. He knows she's serious, and honestly, he's here for the chaos. This is going to be wild. Everything starts with that nightmare from 10 years ago, the fire at the Empress's palace that changed the course of history forever. Blair is putting it all on the line. She tells the dupe that if he accepts her proposal, she'll help him uncover the real truth of what happened that night. Look at that smirk. The Duke isn't just listening, he's calculating every single word, weighing the value of the princess's offer. He's probably thinking, how can you even show your face here after all this time? The tension in the air is literally thick enough to cut with a knife. We're flashing back to a time of total desperation, where someone was frantically writing, begging for a way out of this suffocating darkness. Please help me, princess. It's a haunting plea from the past that still echoes in the silence of this very room. Someone was desperate to clear their aunt's name, knowing deep down she wasn't the monster the world made her out to be. But back then, the response was cold and distant. A young girl caught in a web of lies she didn't have the strength to escape. I don't remember anything. The most painful lie anyone could tell when the truth is screaming to be heard. That denial sparked a deep sense of betrayal and resentment that has been festering for an entire decade. 10 years of silence, and now she just brings it up? No wonder he's questioning her motives for this marriage. The Duke looks like he's trying to see right through her soul. He needs to know what her real game is before he commits. Blair plays it cool, sipping her tea like a total pro. She tells him straight up, marriage is her only legal ticket out of the imperial palace. He gets all concerned, asking if it wouldn't be better to marry someone who actually loves and cherishes her. Like he actually cares? Love? Girl, please. In this world, love is just a weapon used to control you. She knows better than to fall for that trap again. She's done with the fairy tale nonsense. No more hollow eternities for our girl Blair. She's living for the now. She doesn't believe in things like love anymore. She's seen the dark side of it and she's never going back. Give and take, that's the only kind of relationship she trusts. Clear boundaries and no messy feelings to get in the way. She thinks the Duke is the perfect partner for this business deal because he's just as cold and calculated as she needs him to be. She's standing her ground, staring him down with those piercing violet eyes. She's not the scared little girl she used to be. She flashes back to an old dream, wanting to leave the palace and travel the wide world, a dream that was crushed before it could begin. Can you take me to the sea? A simple wish from a child that feels a million miles away from the cold reality she's living in now. The Duke is finally starting to see the potential in this arrangement. He's not doing this for her, he's doing it for his own power. I accept that proposal. Boom! The deal is sealed. The tea is officially brewing and things are about to get messy. He's got his own reasons hidden away. He was never going to defy the emperor anyway, so why not gain a useful pawn? He sees this as a high-stakes chess match. The marriage is just a strategic move to increase the duchy's troops. The emperor used treason as a pretext to gut his forces, and now the duke is playing the long game to get them back. If he can use the princess to find out the truth about that day, it's a win-win. And once he's done, he's planning a clean divorce. Blair gets up to leave, her head held high. She got exactly what she came for, but the air is still thick with secrets. She stops for a split second, looking back. There's something she wants to ask, something burning deep in her chest. But the Duke is already moving on. He's a brick wall, and she knows he won't give her the real answers yet. She clenches her hands, struggling with the weight of her own questions. This is only the beginning of her fight. She wonders if the man in front of her is the same one she remembers, the one who might have been her downfall. She watches him walk away, the ghost of a name lingering on her lips. Herden. Did you kill me? Chills, literally chills. She's haunted by her past life and the man who might have ended it. We skip forward to the day before the wedding. Blair is at a graveyard, and you can feel the heaviness in the air. She's there to visit her biological mother, the Empress who was lost in that fire. She's finally facing the grief she buried. She's apologizing for ignoring her mother's memory for 10 whole years. She was just a child trying to survive in a house of snakes. Now, she's finally trying to piece together the memories she locked away to stay safe. The truth is painful, but she can't run. Back then, she was terrified. No matter what the truth was, she felt like she was going to lose a mother either way. In her previous life, she tried to face this for the Duke's sake, but it only led to her own health failing and her spirit breaking. She was broken and discarded back then. The man she loved just watched her wither away while telling her to stay silent. He told her to do nothing, to just stay still, just as she had done her whole life. He wanted her to be a ghost, but that version of Blair is dead. This new Blair knows that nothing will ever change if she keeps avoiding the shadows. Her maid interrupts her thoughts. The Grand Empress Dowager is waiting. Duty calls, even when your heart is in pieces. She's determined. In this life, she's going to face the truth head-on and leave that regretful past behind her for good. And then, crack! A slap out of nowhere. The current Empress Mother is absolutely losing her mind. She's screaming about Blair visiting that woman right before the wedding. The jealousy and rage are radiating off her. She's playing the I'm your mother card, trying to guilt-trip Blair after abusing her for years. Girl, the audacity! Blair just takes it, but you can see the cold fire in her eyes. She's done being the punching bag for this woman. The Empress Mother starts her usual lecture about how Blair needs to be loved and enviable, just like she was. She calls the biological mother's life pathetic and useless because she wasn't loved. This woman is seriously toxic. This was what Blair was taught love looked like: strict control, constant criticism, and a plate of rules. Strict weight management, perfect behavior. Everything was a performance to earn just a scrap of affection from a monster. She thought if she just endured the pain, her maids wouldn't get punished and she'd finally be seen as beautiful. She wanted the world to love her, so she let them break her spirit. It's honestly heartbreaking to see what she went through. But everything changed the moment she held her son Azil in her previous life. That was the first time she felt real, pure love. Seeing her child eat happily was more precious to her than any crown. She realized the Empress's version of love was a lie. True love isn't about control or making someone a great support for your own political power. It's something much deeper. Blair finally speaks up, throwing it back in her face. "Since when did you care for me so much, Mother? Ooh, get her." The maids are absolutely gasping. No one talks back to the Empress like that. The atmosphere is totally electric now.
The Empress Mother looks like she's about to explode. Her perfect daughter is finally showing her teeth. Blair mockingly worries about her face being scarred before the wedding. She's using the Empress's own words as a weapon. She clenches her fist, refusing to let this woman have power over her emotions ever again. She's taking control.
You really are driving a stake through your mother's heart. The Empress is playing the victim now. How predictable. Blair walks away, her heels clicking on the floor with every step. She's leaving the ignorant past behind her. It's the end of a painful, unrequited love for a mother who never deserved a single ounce of it. She's finally free. She's stepping into her new life, ready to face the wedding and whatever the Duke has planned. Watch out, world! Surrounded by the very men meant to protect her, Blair can't help but search every face for a hint of the malice she survived. The trauma of the attack still lingers in her eyes, a constant shadow that refuses to lift even in the light of day. She scans the ranks of the Duke's guards. None of them match the man who tried to take her life, but the relief is only temporary. A quiet breath escapes her. At least for now, the immediate threat isn't hiding within her husband's own inner circle. But the safety she feels is fragile, held together by the cold, silent man standing just a few paces behind her. Duke Herden watches her with an intensity that is impossible to read. Is he her protector, or just another warden in this gilded cage? He notices the slight tremble in her hands, the way the sweat beads on his own brow from the suffocating tension between them. His silence is a weight she isn't sure she can carry, especially with the eyes of the entire court watching their every move. She tries to maintain her composure, but the distance between them feels like a physical ache. Even the onlookers can see it. To the outside world, they are a couple defined by ice and obligation rather than the warmth of a new marriage. The whispers have already begun. No one expected love, but they didn't expect a rejection so blatant and public. Every step toward the mansion feels like a march toward an inevitable confrontation she isn't prepared for. Suddenly, the heavy atmosphere is shattered by a burst of pure, unadulterated joy. A small child, oblivious to the political minefield he's entering, crashes straight into the princess. He tumbles back, a handful of berries scattering like lost jewels across the snow-dusted ground. The air in the courtyard freezes. The guards hold their breath, waiting for the explosion they've been conditioned to expect. Panic surges through the child's handler. He knows the reputation of the royal family, and he fears the worst for the boy. He rushes forward, desperate to shield the child from the wrath of a woman they believe to be as cold as the winter air. In their minds, Blair is just another version of her mother, the infamous Katrina, whose cruelty was legendary. They expect a harsh word, a strike, or worse. They see a monster where there is only a woman trying to find her footing. But Blair doesn't lash out. She reaches out. Her voice is soft, concerned only with the well-being of the little boy named Jeremy. She offers him a smile so genuine it seems to transform the very air around them, washing away the bitterness of the morning. The guard stands frozen, his mouth agape. This isn't the princess he was warned about. This isn't the daughter of Katrina. He feels a flush of shame creep up his neck, realizing how deeply he misjudged the woman standing before him. Even Herden is caught off guard. He watches her interact with the boy, searching for a sign of performative grace, but finds only sincerity. He realized in that moment that he has never seen her truly smile before. It's a sight that shakes the very foundation of his resolve. For a fleeting second, the contract, the war, and the politics disappear. There is only a woman and a child, and the man watching them with new eyes. But the sanctuary of the courtyard is short-lived. The luncheon awaits, and with it, the true predators of the Delmark family. The dining room is a masterpiece of opulence and artificiality, where every compliment is a sharpened blade.
Her mother and brother sit at the head of the table, their laughter ringing out with a hollow, predatory sound. The Emperor wastes no time, pivoting the conversation toward the one thing Blair dreads most, the production of an heir. The wine flows as freely as the insults, hidden beneath the guise of family concern and imperial duty.
Her brother speaks of the duchy's lack of heirs as if he's discussing a shortage of grain, completely disregarding Blair's humanity. Herden remains a statue of stoic endurance, his eyes fixed on his glass, while the Emperor maps out their future like a military campaign. The conversation shifts, the Emperor's eyes gleaming with a dangerous ambition that has nothing to do with family. He speaks of trade routes and the Eastern continent, but the subtext is clear to everyone at the table. He isn't looking for prosperity, he's looking for a path to expansion, and he needs the Duke's sword to pave the way. His voice drops to a low, conspiratorial hum, the sound of a man who has already decided the fate of thousands. He asks for the Duke's opinion, but it's not an inquiry. It's an order wrapped in the silk of a casual question. Herden's eyes narrow. He sees the trap being laid out for him, the way his marriage is being used to bind him to a slaughter he wants no part of. The Emperor wants to seize the eastern ports, a move that would ignite a fire across the entire continent. He wants war, and he expects his sister's husband to be the one to lead the charge into the flames. Herden realizes now why his requests for troop reinforcements were granted so easily. He wasn't being supported, he was being bought. He watches the Emperor's smug expression, disgusted by a man who treats human lives like pieces on a chessboard. He looks over at Blair, seeing the same realization dawning on her face, the same horror he feels in his own chest. She is trembling, her knuckles white as she grips the edge of the table. She can't stay silent while her brother plans a massacre. The pressure mounts until it's unbearable. She knows the cost of defiance in this family, but the cost of silence is even higher. Blair finally finds her voice, her words cutting through the Emperor's delusions with the sharpness of a blade. She reminds him that war leaves scars that never truly heal, for the victors just as much as the defeated. She stands up for her husband, declaring that he and his citizens are not tools to be used for her brother's ego. In this moment, she isn't just a princess. She is a shield, placing herself between her husband and the man who would destroy him. Her mother's reaction is instantaneous, a venomous hiss that demands silence and obedience from a daughter she views as an object. She mocks Blair's lack of education, her lack of statecraft, trying to bury her courage under a mountain of condescension. The Emperor joins in, his gaze cold and dismissive. To him, Blair is nothing more than a woman who should know her place. But then, a hand covers hers, a warm, firm grip that silences the room more effectively than any shout ever could. Herden speaks, and for the first time, his voice carries a note of genuine protection. He tells them his wife hasn't said anything wrong. He stares down the woman who gave her life, his eyes burning with a quiet, lethal fury that makes her recoil. He reminds them that Blair belongs to the Delmark family now. She is no longer their pawn to berate or command. He claims the sole right to judge her, to protect her, and to stand by her side against anyone, even her own blood. The Emperor and his mother can only stare in stunned silence as the man they thought they controlled turns his back on their ambitions. Herden pulls Blair close, a gesture that is both a shield and a promise. He uses the excuse of their honeymoon to end the discussion on his own terms. He leans in, his voice a low murmur meant only for her, a sudden intimacy that feels more dangerous than any war. As she leans into him, Blair realizes that the contract she signed might have saved her life, but it's about to change her heart in ways she never expected. The imperial wedding was supposed to be the most beautiful day of her life, a grand celebration under the falling snow. But for Blair, it felt more like the start of a cold sentence. In this world, a woman's worth is measured by the son she bears and the position she secures for her in-laws. It was a weight she felt with every step toward the altar. Her own brother didn't offer comfort, only cold, calculated advice. He viewed her as a tool, a way to further the family's influence through her marriage to the Duke. He whispered that being a proper lady wasn't enough. She needed to be a seductress in bed to keep the Duke's favor. The words felt like a stain on her white veil. Her mother's gaze was no warmer. In this family, love was a luxury they couldn't afford, and Blair was merely their highest-priced asset. She remembered the times she had been cast aside, the neglect that had shaped her previous life. This time, she promised herself things would be different. She would live well, regardless of where she went or who she was married to. She wouldn't let their expectations define her happiness anymore. As the doors opened, the light spilled into the cathedral. The moment of no return had arrived, and the entire empire was watching. The guests gasped, whispering that she looked like an angel descended from the heavens, a literal snow fairy in her pristine gown. Waiting for her was Duke Herden. He stood tall and imposing, his expression unreadable, a man as cold as the winter outside. Her brother handed her over with a fake smile, pretending to care about her future while secretly celebrating the power he had just secured. This wasn't a union of hearts, it was an imperial order. Neither of them had a choice, and the coldness of his hand told her he knew it as well as she did. The ceremony proceeded with all the solemnity expected of a ducal wedding, every word of the priest ringing hollow in the vast, silent hall. The priest declared them bound by the blessings of the empire, praying for eternal happiness and love that neither of them expected to find. The moment for the kiss of vows arrived. It was the final seal on their contract, a public display of a private arrangement. As he leaned in, Blair braced herself. Her eyes remained open, searching his face for any sign of the man he was behind the title. She was a vision in white, a woman who perfectly fit the role of the tragic, beautiful bride the public adored. Herden looked at her, his blue eyes piercing. For a fleeting second, the snow fairy description didn't seem like an empty compliment. The crowd watched in awe, convinced they were witnessing a fairy tale, unaware of the cold reality beneath the surface. Their lips met in a performance of intimacy. It was the start of their life together, a partnership built on secrets and a shared goal. Hours later, the festivities had ended, but the work never did. The wedding night began not with romance, but with the scratching of a pen. His aide was exhausted, ready to call it a day, but the Duke showed no signs of stopping. To him, this was just another day. Herden looked disheveled, the weight of his responsibilities clear in his tired eyes. The wedding hadn't changed his priorities. His aide was stunned to see him in the office. It was his wedding night, after all. Why wasn't he with his new bride? The Duke's response was sharp. He didn't need a reason to be in his own office, and he certainly didn't care for the social expectations of the night. Rumors would surely spread about a groom who abandons his bride for paperwork, but Herden was never one to care about idle gossip. His aide thought he was crazy, a true workaholic who couldn't even set aside one night for the woman he had just married. But the Duke had more on his mind than duty. He was thinking about the proposal Blair had made to him earlier. She had promised to help him uncover the truth behind the fire incident from 10 years ago. It was a dangerous game, but she seemed determined to play. He wondered if her memory loss was real or just a convenient cover for an ulterior motive. He couldn't afford to trust her completely. Despite his cold exterior, curiosity began to gnaw at him. What was she doing right now? Was she really the frail woman she appeared to be? He assumed she would be fast asleep, exhausted by the grueling schedule of the imperial wedding. After all, there was no need for wedding night rituals in a contract marriage. They both knew where they stood. Yet the image of her stayed in his mind.
the way she looked at the altar, the quiet strength in her eyes. He stopped his work, the silence of the office suddenly feeling oppressive. He found himself standing up, driven by an impulse he couldn't explain. His aide watched him leave, surprised by the sudden change in direction. Maybe the Duke wasn't as indifferent as he claimed. He decided he wanted to see her. He wanted to see what kind of expression his doll-like wife would make at an unwelcome midnight visit. But Blair wasn't sleeping. She was sitting at her desk, the soft candlelight illuminating her focused face as she wrote with a steady hand. When the door creaked open, she didn't jump. She just looked up, her expression calm despite the late hour. She looked so small in the vast bedroom, a solitary figure surrounded by the cold luxury of the Duke's estate. Outside, the snow continued to pile up, mirroring the chilly atmosphere of the room they now shared. Herden walked toward her, his presence filling the space. He had expected to find a sleeping woman, not one still busy with her own plans. He loomed over her, his shadow falling across the papers she was working on. She didn't shrink away from him. She was startled by his arrival, her eyes wide with genuine surprise. She hadn't expected him to show up at all. He reminded her that it was their wedding night, and it was only natural for a husband and wife to spend it together, even if only in name. He questioned why she was still awake, waiting for him. Was she hoping for more than just a business arrangement? Blair replied that it wouldn't be polite to be asleep when he arrived. She was playing the part of the perfect wife, even in private. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the document she had been preparing. She was nervous, but she was ready. She handed him the papers. It was a contract. She wanted their arrangement to be clear, with everything written down in black and white. Herden took the papers, his brow furrowing as he began to read. She had been thorough, outlining the terms of their union with precision. Clause 1 was clear. She would cooperate fully in uncovering the truth about the fire in exchange for her position. The marriage would last 1 year, or until the truth was revealed. It was a temporary alliance, a means to an end for both of them. Clause 2 demanded mutual respect. She wanted them to fulfill their responsibilities as spouses in public to protect their reputations. She remembered the pain of being neglected in her past life. She wouldn't let herself be humiliated again, not if she could help it. She worried that she had gone too far, that her demands were too much for a man like him, but she had to stand her ground. She challenged him, asking what he would do if she didn't fulfill her side of the bargain. She wanted to know the stakes. She realized there needed to be a penalty to make him take the contract seriously. A contract without consequences was just a piece of paper. She told him firmly that if he didn't fulfill the terms, she wouldn't grant him a divorce. She would bind him to her forever. Herden stared at her, a strange expression crossing his face. He seemed almost amused by her audacity. A low, "aha," escaped his lips. He was beginning to see that Blair was much more than just a doll. She was a strategist. Blair felt like he was scoffing at her, and she tightened her grip on the papers. She wouldn't be intimidated by his arrogance. He looked at her with renewed interest. She had certainly caught his attention now, but not in the way she had expected. His finger traced over a specific part of the contract. It was a clause about sharing a bed twice a month to maintain appearances. He leaned in close, his voice a low murmur. He wanted to know exactly what she meant by sharing a bed. Was it just for show? He asked if she was offering to play the role of a mistress who warms his bed. The words were a challenge, a provocation. Blair was horrified. She told him not to speak like that. She hadn't meant it in a tawdry way. She was thinking of the future. She needed an excuse for when she eventually conceived Aziel. Everything she did was for the child she knew she had to have. She just wanted to maintain a good relationship with him, to ensure their partnership remained stable for as long as it lasted. Herden repeated her words with a hint of sarcasm. A good relationship? It was a concept he found entirely foreign in their world. He suddenly gripped her arm, pulling her toward him.
If she wanted to fulfill her marital duties, he decided he wouldn't make her wait. Blair gasped, her heart racing. This wasn't what she had planned. She thought they had more time before things became this intimate. He told her there was no need to wait for a specific date or time. If it was in the contract, they might as well start tonight. His gaze was intense, a fire burning in his blue eyes that hadn't been there before. He was taking control of the situation. As he pulled her closer, the cold contract was forgotten. In the quiet of their wedding night, the distance between them finally began to vanish. The wedding night wasn't a celebration of love, but a collision of two guarded souls. In the heavy silence of the chamber, the air was thick with a tension that felt more like a battle than a union. In the heat of the moment, there was no room for politics or vengeance, only the suffocating proximity of a man Blair knew she shouldn't want. Every touch was a reminder of the distance between them, a physical closeness that only highlighted the emotional void. Blair felt a sharp intake of breath, the reality of her situation crashing down even in the midst of their intimacy. She knew the truth that lay beneath his heat. This wasn't love. It wasn't even a pretense for some ulterior motive. To Hurden, it was just a fleeting moment of lust, a temporary surrender to a desire he couldn't quite suppress. Blair lay there, exposed and vulnerable, her mind racing even as her body betrayed her by responding to him. Hurden looked down at her, his expression unreadable, caught between the instinct to pull away and the urge to stay. She had seen this body countless times in her past life, yet tonight everything felt jarringly new, as if she were seeing him for the first time. His gaze was overwhelming, a weight that seemed to see right through her defenses and into the secrets she carried. He demanded she not look away, forcing her to confront the raw intensity of a moment that felt increasingly wrong. His hands were firm, a possessive grip that reminded her she was now legally his, regardless of where his heart truly lay. A soft gasp escaped her as the weight of their situation settled over her like a shroud. This wasn't how she imagined her second chance beginning. She clung to him, a desperate reaction to the whirlpool of emotions threatening to drown her. Hurden's thoughts were a dark tangle. Part of him wanted to simply give in to the base desire Blair herself had suggested earlier. But he looked at her, at the fragile woman beneath him, and realized she might truly shatter if he pushed any further. The moment broke with a sharp breath, the realization of his own cruelty hitting him like a physical blow. He couldn't lose the only witness to the incident he was so desperate to solve, not just because he'd given in to his own cravings. She watched her, the way she seemed to fully embrace the pain of the moment and found a twisted kind of beauty in her sorrow. He had never doubted her beauty, but he had also never truly cared for it. Now, that fact was hitting him with renewed force. Their hands intertwined, a hollow gesture of union in a room filled with ghosts and unspoken resentments. She looked like a figure sculpted from moonlight, pale and ethereal, yet her teary eyes and bitten lips spoke of a very human suffering. When she called out his name, it wasn't with love, but with a tearful plea that cut through his resolve. For a fleeting second, he almost forgot whose daughter she was. He almost forgot the blood that stood between them. But the memory returned, cold and unforgiving. He pulled back, the brief warmth of the night evaporating instantly. Blair stirred as the morning light began to filter into the room, the silence now deafening in the wake of the night's storm. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the cold, empty space beside her where her husband should have been. A phantom memory of him flickered in her mind, a vision of the man she once thought she knew. She sat up alone, the grand bed feeling more like a desert. The reality of her marriage was setting in, and it was colder than she feared. She checked the sheets,
the lingering scent of him the only proof that the previous night hadn't been a fever dream. In her past life, he had stayed until morning. Looking back, she realized it wasn't out of affection, but a desperate need to interrogate her. He had used her then, and he was using her now. The only difference was that this time, she was wide awake to his games. She cursed her own naivety for ever believing there could be something more between them than mutual exploitation. The hard truth echoed in the empty room. He doesn't love her. He never did, and he likely never would. Her maid, Lena, burst in, her face a mask of indignation on behalf of her mistress. Lena couldn't believe the Duke would leave his bride alone on their very first night, her anger vibrating through the room. Blair tried to remain calm, insisting she was fine and that sleeping alone was actually more comfortable. But Lena's vigorous brushing soon turned into accidental roughhousing, her frustration manifesting in her movements. The maid continued her rant, convinced that no wife should be treated with such calculated neglect. She claimed her knowledge came from books, the treasure trove of soul food, giving her a romanticized view of how things should be. Blair couldn't help but tease her, wondering exactly what kind of red sticker books Lena had been reading. Lena quickly changed the subject, acknowledging the Duke's handsome face, but remaining skeptical of his personality. Blair's gaze drifted, her thoughts returning to the man who was currently the center of her complicated world. Suddenly, a searing vision flashed before her eyes, a glowing magic circle centered on her own chest. It was a jarring, supernatural intrusion into the mundane morning, leaving her senses reeling. She gasped, clutching at her throat. The image burned into her mind even as it faded from her sight. Lena looked at her with concern, but Blair quickly dismissed it as her imagination, trying to steady her racing heart. But as she looked at her maid, Blair noticed something that couldn't be explained away. Lena's hands were heavily bandaged. Her purple eyes narrowed, a protective instinct flaring up. Those bandages hadn't been there the night before. Blair confronted her immediately, her voice sharp with a concern that brooked no evasion. Lena tried to laugh it off, claiming she'd just had a clumsy accident while working that morning. She insisted it was nothing to worry about, her eyes darting away to avoid Blair's penetrating stare. But Blair remembered the rules of this house. An unfamiliar mansion, surrounded by strangers, Lena was just as isolated as she was. The maid gently guided her back to the chair, intent on finishing her hair so they could move on with the day. Blair felt a pang of guilt. In her past life, she had been so consumed by her own suffering that she never looked out for the girl who had stayed by her side. She knew Lena didn't work in the kitchen. There was no reason for her to be handling knives. This was no accident. The thought that Lena might be getting bullied by the other staff fueled Blair's growing resolve. She wouldn't let history repeat itself. The preparation was complete. It was time to step out of the sanctuary of her room and into the lion's den of the Duke's estate. Lena put on a brave face, offering to escort her to the dining room with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Blair took a final look in the mirror. She wasn't just a bride, she was a survivor, and she had a role to play. The dining hall was vast and cold, a perfect reflection of the man who waited for her at the head of the long table. Herden didn't even look up at first, his focus on his own quiet power as he acknowledged her presence with a clinical, "Good morning." He sat there, perfectly composed, as if the intimacy they had shared hours ago was nothing more than a minor administrative detail. The silence of the dining hall is heavy, broken only by the cold clink of silverware against porcelain. It's a wedding feast for two people who share nothing but a contract. Her dean speaks of the butler and the staff as if he's listing assets in a ledger. There is no warmth here, only the rigid structure of a house I'm supposed to call home. I offer a quiet thank you, keeping my gaze steady. I didn't come here for a fairy tale. I came here to survive, and survival starts with knowing the lay of the land.
He remains detached, his focus entirely on the meal. To him, I am a variable he's still trying to solve, a piece of the puzzle that doesn't quite fit. I decide to break the ice with the one topic that truly haunts us both. I ask him how he plans to investigate the fire from 10 years ago. My hands tremble slightly as I cut into the steak. That night changed everything, and yet my own mind has locked the truth away behind a wall of shadows. He doesn't hesitate. Since I claim to have no memory of the event, he's already made arrangements to find a hypnotist. The word hangs in the air, clinical and sharp. Hypnosis. A desperate attempt to dig into a past I'm not sure I'm ready to face. I tell him I've tried it before, and it failed. My mind is a fortress that even I can't enter. But Herdine isn't the type of man to take no for an answer. The suspicion in his eyes is a physical weight. He doesn't believe in my amnesia. He thinks I'm playing a game, hiding the truth to protect myself. He asks how he could possibly trust me. It's a fair question in a world where everyone has a hidden agenda, especially a princess sold into a ducal house. Whether I've truly lost my memory or if I'm just a very talented actress, he knows that only I have the answer to that. He makes it clear that this marriage isn't built on trust. It's a contract of profit, a cold exchange of status and security. I accept his terms with a small nod. If trust is a luxury we can't afford, then I will work with the suspicion he provides. I agree to the hypnosis. If it's what he needs to move forward, I'll open the doors to my mind, even if I'm terrified of what might be lurking inside. After dinner, the tour begins. The study is grand, smelling of old parchment and the heavy wake of the Delmark lineage. Mason, the head butler, leads me through the halls. He speaks of the late master's favorite rooms with a reverence that only comes from decades of service. Mason is the heartbeat of this estate. He knows every corner, every secret, and every tradition that keeps this house standing. He truly is someone who has served the family for generations. His loyalty is to the name Delmark more than to any individual occupant. He points out the window seats with views of the garden, noting how guests were always treated with the utmost care. I remember these details from my previous life, but hearing them again brings back a flood of memories I thought I'd buried. This regression is a second chance, but it's also a haunting. The sun begins to set, casting long, golden shadows across the floor. Mason realizes he's kept me far longer than intended. He offers his apologies as he escorts me toward my bedroom. But I'm not ready to retire to the shadows just yet. He worries that he's overstepped his bounds in his eagerness to show me the estate. He thinks a princess should be resting after such a stressful transition. But I am the mistress of this house now, and there are things I need to know if I'm going to protect my future. I stop him and make my request clear. I want to see the servant registry and the household inventory ledgers. Mason is taken aback. These are tasks usually left to the butler or the Duke himself. He suggests I leave the heavy lifting to him. I look him in the eye. I'm a member of the Delmark family now, and it's only right that I do my part. I won't be a duchess in name only. The butler bows, his surprise giving way to a new kind of respect. He understands that I'm not the fragile doll he expected. He promises to have the documents ready for me by tomorrow morning. I tell him I'm looking forward to learning from his perspective. Mason offers a small, rare smile. It's the first sign of a crack in the formal armor of this house. As he walks away, I wonder if I've just made my first ally. He usually never shows emotion. Perhaps he's as curious about me as I am about him. In my past life, I was too afraid of judgment to get involved in the family's affairs. I let them sideline me until I was nothing. But now, I don't care what anyone thinks. I have 1 year. That's the duration of the contract I proposed to Herdine. 12 months to set the stage for my disappearance.
I sit at my desk, the weight of my secret pregnancy heavy in my mind. I conceived Azil around early summer. Time is my greatest enemy. Herdine can never find out about the child. If he knew he had an heir, he would never let me go. I have to wrap everything up before I start to show. I look at the drawing of my son. I'm doing this for him, for a life where he isn't a pawn in a ducal power struggle. That means I only have 6 months left. 6 months to dismantle a legacy and disappear into the night. I begin to list the 3 things I must resolve before the clock runs out. First, I need to recover my memories of the fire. The truth is the only thing that can set me free. The memories are like charred remains, difficult to piece together, but essential. If I don't know what happened, I can't stop it from happening again. The image of the burning estate haunts my dreams. It wasn't an accident, it was a warning, and I need to know who sent it. Second, I have to prepare for the divorce. It sounds simple, but in this empire, nothing is ever that easy. I need the emperor's consent to dissolve this union. And I know the emperor. He won't give it up easily. Ivan pushed for this marriage specifically to trap Herdine. He won't agree to a divorce if the fault lies with the duke. The pieces on the board are set. To win this game, I have to be willing to sacrifice my own queen. In that case, there's only one way out. I have to be the one at fault. I have to become the villain in this story. I have to force the emperor's hand through the power of public opinion. I need a scandal so disgraceful that the crown has no choice but to cast me out.
A scandal with another man. It's the oldest trick in the book, but it's the most effective way to ruin a reputation beyond repair. But one man won't be enough. If I only pick one, he'll be punished for a crime against a princess. I can't have his blood on my hands. But what if there are several men? What if I create a web of adultery so complex that the public's fury is aimed solely at me? The public will aim their arrows at the unfaithful woman. They will demand my head, and in doing so, they will grant me my freedom. And if Azil's existence is ever discovered after I'm gone, I can claim he belongs to one of them. A lie to protect the most important truth in my life. To do that, I'll need to bribe several men. I'll need to build a shadow network of actors to play their parts in my downfall. With a scandal this disgraceful, I won't be able to stay in the empire. But that was always the plan. I don't want their throne, I want my son. I'll have to leave the capital the moment the divorce is finalized. If I'm unlucky, Ivan or my mother might try to have me imprisoned to save face. I need to arrange a new identity, a place to live in secret where the long arm of the imperial family can't reach us. I should pay a visit to the guild soon. They deal in secrets and shadows. They can help me disappear. Finally, the third thing, finding the mastermind who killed me before my regression. I won't let them take me twice. It's unlikely the assailant killed me out of a personal grudge. I was a puppet. I wasn't worth the effort of a high-profile assassination. There must be someone behind it, someone who stood to gain from the death of a disgraced princess. I have to find them and uncover the reason why. I refuse to leave Azil all alone in this life. I will find the monster who took his mother away, and I will make sure they never have the chance again. I'll start with what's closest to me. I'll stop by the knight's training ground in the morning and begin gathering information. But then I remember the contract. We never actually finished signing the papers yesterday. Everything is still up in the air. I hold the parchment in my hand. It's just a piece of paper, but it's the only thing keeping me safe in this house for now. I decide to find the Duke. I can't let another night pass without securing my position, however temporary it may be. I walk through the silent corridors, the flickering candlelight casting shadows that look like ghosts of my past. I reach his door and knock. My heart is racing, but I keep my voice steady.
I need to finish this. I hear a voice from inside. I wonder if it's Mason or if the Duke is still awake, brooding over his suspicions. I push the door open and apologize for the sudden visit. I tell him I realized we didn't finish the contract yesterday. But as I step into the room, my words die in my throat. The air is thick with steam and the scent of expensive soap. The Duke is there, half-dressed and still damp from his bath. The cold, calculating master of the house is replaced by something much more human and much more dangerous. Stepping into the Duke's private quarters late at night felt like walking into a lion's den, but I couldn't let another moment pass with our contract left in limbo. Herden turned, his gaze sharp enough to pierce through the silence of the room. I had to remind myself that we were partners in a transaction, nothing more. His eyes lingered on me, dark and unreadable, filled with a tension that had been simmering since the moment we were forced together. He looked at the scroll in my hands with a dismissive coldness, as if a life-altering agreement was nothing more than a nuisance. With a silent, fluid motion, he reached for the ink and quill. He seemed eager to be done with me, to sign his name and send me back into the shadows. He towered over me, his presence overwhelming. "I'll sign it now," he muttered, his voice a low vibration that made the air feel heavy. But as he reached out, I instinctively pulled back. There were things that still needed to be said, terms that hadn't been fully explored. I insisted on a thorough review. He noticed my hesitation, and for a fleeting second, his fingers brushed against mine. "Your hands are cold," he remarked, his voice devoid of warmth. I looked him in the eye, my voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. I told him I might have changed the terms since we last spoke. In this game of survival, I couldn't afford to be predictable. He went silent, observing me with a newfound curiosity. It was a dangerous dance we were performing, two enemies sharing a bedroom and a secret. I told him about the new clause. I needed a letter of recommendation for Lena, the only person from the palace who truly cared for my well-being. I had to ensure she had a future far away from the imperial family's reach once our time together was over. Herden's mind seemed to drift toward darker suspicions. Did he think I was planning to flee, to elope with a secret lover while he held the empty title of my husband? His jaw tightened. The scandals of unequal marriages were well known, and I could see him wondering if I was just another pawn in a much larger, more scandalous game. Finally, he set the quill to paper. Whatever he thought of my motives, he was committed now. The ink dried, sealing our fates together for the foreseeable future. The night was growing old, and the air between us was thick with things left unsaid. He suggested I should finally go back and rest, but first, a reminder of the reality we faced. There was a luncheon at the Imperial Palace tomorrow, a stage where we would have to play our roles perfectly. I made it clear that while I didn't expect him at every banquet, his presence was mandatory for anything involving my brother or the crown. "As my husband, you must not make a single mistake," I warned. His eyes hardened at the command, the pride of the Delmark Duke clashing with the reality of our deal. I needed the divorce to be undeniable when the time came. The only way to win my freedom was to make our union look flawless until it was ready to break. With a final nod, I turned to leave. The sound of my heels on the stone floor was the only thing grounding me as I walked away from him. "Good night, Herden," I said softly, not looking back. I could feel his gaze burning into my spine until the door clicked shut between us. Left alone in the dim light, Herden stood still, the silence of the room amplifying the chaotic thoughts he had been trying to suppress. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated by the distracting pull I had over him. He hated how easily I could walk in and shatter his composure. He thought I was naive, unaware of the dark, profane thoughts that had been plaguing him since our wedding night. He couldn't shake the memory of how I had clung to him, the heat of the moment blurring the lines between duty and desire. The fact that I had the nerve to visit him so late, dressed in nothing but sleepwear, felt like a deliberate provocation. He watched the door as if I were still there, his mind fixated on the image of my figure highlighted by the moonlight. He reminded himself that I was seawater, something he drank out of desperation that would only leave him more parched. I was the daughter of his enemy, a woman he was duty-bound to despise. Every instinct told him to keep his distance.
But the memory of my touch was a poison he couldn't flush from his system, no matter how much he tried to focus on his hatred. He felt himself losing control, his body betraying the ironclad discipline he had spent a lifetime building. "Am I losing my mind?" he whispered to the empty room. The obsession was taking root, and it terrified him more than any battlefield ever could. He threw his robe aside, determined to burn off the restless energy. He refused to be a slave to his own desires, especially for a woman like me. The next morning, the training grounds of the Delmark Duchy were filled with the harsh ring of steel against steel. Herden was a storm on the field, his strikes brutal and precise. He was pushing his men to their absolute limits, but mostly he was pushing himself. One by one, the knights fell before him. He showed no mercy, his frustration manifesting in every heavy blow he dealt. The knights watched in terror as their leader moved with a ferocity they hadn't seen in years. Something was driving him, and it wasn't just duty. "Next," he barked, his voice echoing off the castle walls. He was a man possessed, trying to drown out his thoughts in the heat of combat. The men whispered among themselves, wondering who had managed to get on the Duke's bad side so early in his honeymoon. They were exhausted, panting in the dirt, yet Herden showed no signs of slowing down. He was a man trying to outrun his own shadow. His closest advisors watched from the sidelines, sensing the shift in the air. The Duke's usual cold composure had been replaced by something much more volatile. Mason, the Duke's aide, noticed a movement at the edge of the courtyard. A familiar figure was approaching, bringing the very source of the Duke's turmoil with her. His eyes widened as he realized who it was. The knights followed his gaze, the training coming to a sudden, awkward halt. Herden stopped, his chest heaving as he turned to see me standing there. The anger in his eyes flickered, replaced by that same dark, intense stare. I arrived dressed for the palace, my expression a mask of cool elegance. I wasn't there for a social call, I was there for a purpose. Herden approached, his sword still in hand. "What brings you here?" he asked, his voice rough from exertion. I told him I wanted to meet the knights before we left. It was a polite excuse, one that the men behind him clearly didn't believe. The knights looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and deep-seated resentment. To them, I was just another member of the family that had caused them so much pain. They were men who had survived blood and fire alongside their duke. Their loyalty was absolute, and their hatred for the imperial family ran just as deep. I knew exactly what they thought of me. I could feel their eyes scanning me, looking for any sign of the weakness they associated with the palace. I could see them wondering if I was naive or just foolish enough to think I could win them over with a few kind words. Mason watched the interaction closely, his mind working through the political implications of my sudden appearance at the training grounds. Herden signaled for his men to show respect. Even if they hated me, they would obey their duke. The tension in the air was palpable, a silent war of wills. The knights knelt, a formal greeting that felt more like a challenge than a welcome. I thanked them, my voice carrying across the silent yard. I looked down at them, my smile not quite reaching my eyes. I didn't need their approval, and I certainly didn't need their love. I knew what they were thinking, but they had no idea why I was truly there. I wasn't playing lady of the house. I was hunting. I gripped my gloves tight. The real reason I had come to the training grounds was far more dangerous than any political maneuver. My eyes searched their ranks, scanning every uniform, every face.
The person who had ended my life in the past was likely standing right in front of me. The Delmark Knights were elite, their skills legendary. To infiltrate the villa and kill me, the assassin had to be one of the best. Either they were an outside force of incredible skill, or they were someone with easy access to the inner sanctum of the duchy. The thought chilled me to the bone. If the killer was an insider, then everyone I saw was a potential suspect.
It was one of the many reasons I suspected Hurden himself. Who else had the power and the motive to see me dead? I looked at him, his silhouette dark against the morning sun. Was he the mastermind, or was the snake hiding in his shadow? I remembered a single detail from that night, a hideous slash mark on the hem of the killer's clothes, a mark left in the struggle. I watched the nights rise, my heart pounding against my ribs. I just needed one slip-up, one glimpse of a torn hem or a hidden scar. The hunt had begun. I would find the one who murdered me, and this time, I wouldn't be the one left bleeding in the dark. The weight of the past is a heavy burden to carry, especially when you're leaving behind a life built on nothing but lies and greed. As we set out, the silence in the carriage is deafening. Hurden sits across from me, a man whose protection I never expected to have. He looks out the window, his profile as sharp and cold as ice. I can't help but wonder what's going through his mind after everything that happened at the palace. He finally turns his gaze toward me, and for a moment, the air feels thin. There's a darkness in his eyes that I haven't quite figured out yet. I look down, my heart heavy with the realization of how much my own family has used us both. I whisper a quiet thank you, but the words feel small in the face of the storm we're currently navigating. He tells me he didn't do it for my gratitude. His resentment for the imperial family runs deep, and I'm just a part of that world he loathes. I apologize anyway. For my mother, for my brother, and for the way they tried to swallow him whole with their greed. He watches me, his expression unreadable. It's a feeling that's lingered in the corner of my heart, even back when my resentment was growing. The exhaustion finally starts to catch up with me. The constant fear, the betrayal, it's all too much. My eyes flutter shut. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can actually breathe, even if it's only for a moment. The carriage jolts as we hit a rough patch on the road, the world outside blurred by the fading light. I slip from my seat, my body completely giving in to the fatigue. But before I can fall, I feel strong arms catching me, pulling me into a warmth I didn't know I was allowed to feel. Hurden looks down at me, his eyes filled with a complicated mix of anger and something far more possessive. He remembers how much he used to resent me, how he wanted to see my calm face twist in pain because I seemed so emotionless. To him, I was just a doll, a beautiful, empty vessel that he took pleasure in being cruel to. But seeing that light fade from my eyes at the hands of my own family, it changed something inside him. It made his blood boil. The thought of anyone else breaking me but him was unbearable. He holds me closer, a silent vow passing through him. If I am to be broken, he will be the one to do it, and he will be the one to pick up the pieces. I wake up slowly, the world still a haze of soft light and shadows. Everything is dark, and for a second, panic flares in my chest. Where am I? Then I see him. Hurden's face is right there, his blue eyes watching me with an intensity that stops my heart. I realize he's carrying me. He's actually carrying me in his arms like I'm something fragile. My eyes go wide as the reality of the situation hits me. This isn't part of the contract. I scramble to find my voice, telling him to put me down, but he doesn't even flinch. He just stares at me, his gaze lingering on my lips for a second,
too long before he speaks. He dismisses my protest as a hassle. He's going to keep holding me whether I like it or not. I tell him I must be heavy, but he just gives a small, almost imperceptible smirk. He doesn't seem to mind at all. We're interrupted by the sound of footsteps. Someone is approaching us at the entrance of the estate. It's one of the staff. He informs the Duke that the person we've been waiting for has finally arrived. I look up at Herden, a sense of dread settling in my stomach. The time has come to face the truth I've buried so deep. 2 days later, I'm standing in a room with a man named Marcel. He's a hypnotist, and he's my only hope of uncovering the missing pieces of my past. Herden is there too, standing in the shadows, watching every move we make. I can feel his eyes on me, heavy and demanding. I tell him he doesn't have to stay if he's busy, but he refuses to leave. He claims it's his duty as my husband to be by my side. He knows that recalling these memories will be painful, and he wants to be there to see what comes to light. Marcel smiles kindly, but his eyes are sharp. He's ready to begin the process of peeling back the layers of my mind. I take a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. How can I ever trust anyone when I can't even trust my own memories? I look at Herden one last time, searching for some sign of what he's really thinking, but his face is a mask of cold indifference. I sit in the chair, the sunlight streaming through the window feeling far too bright for the darkness I'm about to enter. Marcel begins his work, his voice low and rhythmic as he swings a small pendant before my eyes. He tells me to go back 10 years, to the day of the fire at the Empress's palace, the day everything changed. I see myself as a child, a 10-year-old girl sneaking through the palace, trying to go where she's not allowed. My mother didn't like it when I went there, but I couldn't stay away. The Empress was the only one who made me feel safe. I remember her face. She was so beautiful, so kind. She welcomed me with open arms, like I was her own daughter. We were drinking warm cocoa and playing card games with the maids. It was so peaceful, so normal. But then, the memory starts to shift. Everything becomes hazy, and a sense of overwhelming fatigue washes over me. I think I fell asleep, but when I woke up, the warmth of the cocoa was replaced by something far more terrifying. The world is dark. I can't see anything, and the air is thick with the smell of smoke and fear. I'm on the floor, my small body trembling as I try to understand what's happening around me. I tell Marcel that I see dresses, hundreds of them. I realize with a jolt that I'm inside a closet. Marcel's expression shifts. This is the missing piece. The official record says I was found in a hallway, not a closet. He urges me to go outside, to leave the closet behind, but I can't move. The fear is paralyzing. I whisper that I can't go out. Something is holding me back, a primal instinct telling me that the darkness inside is safer than what's waiting outside. Tears stream down my face as the memory of the fire consumes me. I don't know why, but I know I shouldn't leave this spot. Smoke starts to seep through the cracks of the door. I can't breathe. The heat is becoming unbearable. Marcel keeps pushing, his voice becoming more insistent as he tries to force me to face the trauma. I'm gasping for air, my hands clutching at my throat. Save me, please, someone save me. In the present, my body is convulsing. I'm reliving the suffocating terror of that night, and it's tearing me apart. I can't breathe. The words are a choked sob, a desperate plea for help that no one could hear back then. Herden has had enough. He sees the state I'm in, and his protective instincts flare into a cold, sharp rage. Marcel tries to argue, saying we're almost there, that we have to break through this wall to reach the truth. But the truth is killing me. The image of that little girl trapped in the flames is too much to bear. Herden doesn't listen. He grabs Marcel by the collar, his eyes glowing with a terrifying intensity.
He demands that he stop immediately and wake me up. He won't let me suffer another second for a past that he's determined to rewrite. The darkness of the past is a heavy, suffocating weight. Even in sleep, the memories of that day claw at the edges of my mind, refusing to let go. Tears I can't control spill out, blurring the vision of a childhood spent in terror, trapped in a space where no one could hear me scream. When I finally open my eyes, the nightmare doesn't vanish. The pain in my chest is real, a burning reminder that some wounds never truly heal. And there he is, her Dean. His gaze is steady, but there's a flicker of something in his eyes I haven't seen before. Is it pity or concern? He lifts me as if I weigh nothing, his strength a sharp contrast to the way my own body is failing me right now. I can feel the heat of his hands through the thin fabric of my nightgown. It's grounding, yet terrifying. I'm supposed to be his partner, not his burden. My breath comes in ragged gasps. Every inhale feels like shards of glass in my lungs, the after effect of a trauma that literally took my breath away years ago. He watches me struggle, his expression unreadable. I hate this weakness. I hate that he's seeing the cracks in the armor I've spent a decade building. I reach out, my fingers trembling as I catch his sleeve. I need him to listen. I need to tell him what I saw in that darkness. The memory was clearer this time. There was a voice outside the closet. Someone was there while the world around me burned. He looks at me with a mixture of confusion and intensity. He doesn't understand why I'm digging into a past that clearly wants to destroy me. But if I can just push a little further, if I can survive the next session, I might finally step out of that closet for good. My hand grips the sheets, knuckles white. The physical pain is secondary to the desperation clawing at my throat. Her Dean leans in close, his voice low and dangerous. He asks if any of this really matters right now, when I can barely even breathe. I look up at him, my vision swimming. Does he think I'm doing this for fun? Does he think I enjoy reliving my own execution? I promise him I'll do better next time. I'll endure it. I have to. Because if I break, everything I've worked for disappears. My hand grips the sheets, knuckles white. The physical pain is secondary to the desperation clawing at my throat. Her Dean leans in close, his voice low and dangerous. He asks if any of this really matters right now, when I can barely even breathe. I look up at him, my vision swimming. Does he think I'm doing this for fun? Does he think I enjoy reliving my own execution? I promise him I'll do better next time. I'll endure it. I have to. Because if I break, everything I've worked for disappears. I tell him not to worry. This won't affect our contract. Even in my most fragile state, the deal is the only thing that keeps me anchored. He doesn't answer. He just looks at the empty fireplace, his silence more chilling than any words he could have spoken. As he leaves the room, the weight of his frustration lingers. He's a man used to being in control, and my trauma is something he can't simply command to go away. Even as I lie there, exhausted, the word contract echoes in my mind. It's my shield, my cage, and my only hope for a future. Her Dean is beginning to realize just how much I'm willing to sacrifice for that one-year agreement. He sees me betting my very life on it. He steps into the hallway, his resolve hardening. He isn't satisfied with the answers he's been given. His assistant waits for orders, sensing the shift in the Duke's mood. The air in the mansion has turned cold, matching the winter outside. He orders the hypnotist fired. He calls him a quack. He wants someone who can actually help me, not push me to the brink of death. But then he gives a second order, one that catches his assistant off guard. He wants to see the maid from the imperial palace. Immediately. His eyes are cold, calculating. He's going to dismantle my past piece by piece until he finds what's really breaking me.
The assistant hesitates, but one look from her dean is enough to stifle any questions. The Duke is on a mission. The maid arrives, trembling. She knows the weight of the secrets she carries, and standing before the Duke is like standing before a judge. She looks lost in the vastness of his office, a small figure caught in the shadow of a man who demands the truth at any cost. Her hands are bandaged, her posture submissive. She's lived a life of service and silence, but that silence is about to be broken. Her dean sits behind his desk, a predator waiting for his prey to speak. He knows she's the key to understanding the woman he married. The maid tries to stay calm, telling herself she hasn't done anything wrong. But in this house, the truth can be just as dangerous as a lie.
He starts with a simple observation. The fireplace in my room was out. Even on a snowy day, there was no fire to keep me warm. He shows her the cold hearth, the unlit logs. It's a small detail, but to him, it's a glaring anomaly. He asks her point blank, "Is Blair afraid of fire?" He's piecing it together, the way I react to the heat, the way I panic when the lights dim. The maid's eyes widen. She can't hide it anymore. She admits that she only warms the room when I'm away, extinguishing the flames before I return. She explains that I can handle a small candle if it's far away, but anything more, it's too much. The trauma is rooted deep in my bones. She looks at the flickering lamp, a symbol of the very thing that haunts my dreams and keeps me shivering in the dark. Her dean pushes further. He asks if it's because of the incident 10 years ago. He's digging into the tragedy that defined my life. The maid confirms his fears. My respiratory system was ruined that day. My body is a map of a fire that never truly went out. He listens in silence, the weight of the revelation settling over him. He realized that my fragility isn't just a personality trait, it's a chronic injury. He leans back, exhausted by the sheer cruelty of what I've endured. He finally understands why I am the way I am. The next day brings no relief. The doctor arrives, his face grim as he examines the madam of the house. He explains that severe shock can shatter an immune system. I'm not just sick, I'm physically broken by the stress of my own memories. The maid watches as the doctor prepares medicine. She's seen me like this before, but never with a man like her dean watching over me. Her dean stays by my side, a silent sentinel in the dim light of the bedroom. He's no longer just a business partner. He looks at me and wonders how someone can be this frail. I don't even meet the average standards of health. I'm a ghost in a beautiful dress. He reaches out, his hand hovering over my face. He's searching for a sign of life, a sign that I'm still in there somewhere. His touch is light, almost hesitant. He notes that the fever seems to be breaking, but the real sickness is much deeper than a simple chill. He rests his hand on my forehead, his skin cool against my flushed face. For a moment, the Duke of Herdeen looks human. He sighs, the sound heavy with a frustration he can't quite name. He's a man who fixes things, but he can't fix a broken soul. In my sleep, I moan, the pain of the dream returning. My lips move, whispering a name that isn't his. I call out for him, Oziel. The name slips out of my subconscious, a plea for someone from a time before the fire. Herdeen freezes. The name hangs in the air between us, a sudden, sharp barrier. Who is Oziel? His eyes narrow, his sympathetic mood vanishing in an instant. The name of another man is the last thing he expected to hear. He looks around the room, as if the answer is hidden in the shadows. He's starting to connect the dots in a way that fuels his anger. Is that why I'm so obsessed with the contract? To get back to this Oziel? To use the Duke's power to reunite with a lover? He stares at me, his expression hardening into a mask of cold fury. He feels like a fool for ever feeling sorry for me. He remembers me saying I don't believe in love.
Now he thinks it was all a lie, a calculated move to hide my true goal. He stands up, the chair scraping harshly against the floor. He's done playing the role of the concerned husband. He walks toward the door, his strides long and purposeful. He doesn't care who this fool is, but he's not going to be a pawn in our game. He looks back at me one last time, his gaze filled with a bitter realization. I'm not just a victim, I'm a woman with a secret. The fact that this Oziel shares a name with a Delmark ancestor only makes it more annoying. It's a ghost from the past haunting his present. He leaves the room, the door clicking shut behind him. The investigation is over, but the real war has just begun. A basin of cool water, a damp cloth, and the quiet devotion of the only person in this mansion who doesn't look at me with contempt. My fever has finally broken, but the air in this room remains heavy. Lena is relieved, her voice soft as she plans for my recovery. She thinks of my hair, my clothes, and my warmth, while the rest of the world only thinks of my utility. But outside these doors, the shadows of the duchy are never far. Other maids linger, their smiles as sharp as the blades they hide behind their backs. They offer empty words of concern, pretending to care about the extra work my illness has caused. It's a performance, one I've seen 1,000 times before. They tell Lena to watch her step, their voices laced with a malice that makes my skin crawl. They aren't worried about her falling, they're the ones waiting to trip her. I remember the accident. Lena, carrying a vase of flowers, her face bright with a simple desire to please me. A foot extended in the dark, a cruel laugh muffled by the heavy carpets. It wasn't a mistake, it was a targeted strike against the only ally I have left. The vase shattered, the water spilled, and for a moment, the world felt like it was breaking right along with her. Now, her hands are wrapped in bandages, hiding the wounds earned from their petty jealousy. She carries the weight of my reputation on her fragile shoulders. She endures it all in silence, walking through these halls like a ghost, terrified that her suffering will only make things harder for me. Elsewhere in the estate, a different kind of preparation is underway. The Baroness has sent over the catalogs for the upcoming season. Duke Marcel looks over the materials with a clinical detachment. He is a man of power and duty, yet there is something in his gaze that lingers a second too long. The New Year's festival is approaching. It's a time for celebration, for new beginnings, and for the nobility to put on their finest masks. He is told to choose the fabrics for my formal wear first. He flips through the pages, his mind a labyrinth of secrets I have yet to map. In the quiet of my recovery, I find myself thinking of him, of the contract that binds us and the distance that keeps us apart. Marcel closes his eyes, perhaps weary of the games we all play, or perhaps he is simply waiting for the next move in this complicated dance. He hands the catalog back, his decision made with the same decisive coldness that defines his every action. "Choose whatever keeps her warm," he says. A simple instruction, yet it carries a weight of protection that I didn't expect from a man like him. When the designer arrives, the room is filled with silks and lace, the physical manifestations of a world that values appearance over substance. Baroness Siobel's designer is all smiles and flattery, her voice a high-pitched trill as she presents her selections. I listen, but my mind is elsewhere. I feel a strange emptiness in the room, a missing presence that makes my heart race. I realize Lena hasn't returned. She should have been here by now. The designer notices my distraction, her brow furrowing in confusion. I try to remain composed, thanking her for the wedding dress, playing the part of the grateful Duchess while a cold dread pools in my stomach. She speaks of honor and beauty, but all I can think about are Lena's bandaged hands and the cruel whispers in the hallway. The designer finally takes her leave, promising to return with the finished designs. I wait until the door clicks shut before I move. The silence that follows is deafening. I turn to the head maid, my voice steady despite the tremor in my soul. "Where is Lena?" I ask. "I haven't seen her since she helped me dress." The head maid's expression is unreadable, a mask of professional indifference. She offers to go look for her, but I can see the flicker of something else in her eyes. I don't trust her. I don't trust anyone in this house. I tell her it's fine. I'll go myself. I wrap my shawl around my shoulders, the soft fur doing nothing to ward off the chill in the air. I step out into the hallway alone. I need to find her. I need to know she hasn't been broken by the monsters I've failed to keep at bay.
The maids I pass turn their heads, their eyes following me with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. They think I'm weak. They think I'm just another victim of this house. I walk down the grand staircase, my footsteps echoing against the cold stone. The duchy is a prison of my own making, and today the walls feel like they're closing in. I see the way they look at me. The empire's greatest beauty, reduced to a woman wandering her own halls in search of a servant. But I am more than just a face. I am a survivor, and I will not let them take the one thing I have left. Then I hear it, voices coming from behind a half-closed door, whispers, followed by a cruel, mocking laugh. I stop, my breath catching in my throat. I know those voices, and I know exactly who they're talking about. They're talking about Lena, about how tough she is, just like her mistress. They're laughing at her pain, at her devotion. My vision blurs with a sudden hot rage. This is what they do. They tear down anything that is good, anything that is pure, just to feel a moment of power. I push the door open. The light spills into the room, catching the three maids by surprise. They freeze, their laughter dying in their throats. They were mocking her for getting splashed with dirty water, for not even batting an eye as she went to wash up. They think her silence is a sign of weakness, but I see the truth. I see the tears she's trying so hard to hide. I see the way they've cornered her, like wolves around a wounded lamb. They ask me if everything is all right, their voices dripping with a fake sweetness that makes me want to scream. Lena stands there, damp and shaking, her bandaged hands trembling at her sides. She looks at me with such fear, such desperation. And in that moment, I see myself. I see the girl I used to be, the one who was bullied and broken until there was nothing left but a hollow shell. I realized then that she was enduring all of this to protect me. She didn't want my bad reputation to get any worse. She was suffering for my sake. It was the same in my past life. I was so consumed by my own misery that I failed to see the people who were actually on my side. I won't let it happen again. I reach out and grab the lead bully's arm, my grip tight enough to leave a bruise. The room goes silent. The other maids gasp, their eyes wide with shock. They didn't think I had it in me. "Apologize," I say. My voice is a low growl, a sound I didn't know I could make. They stammer, pretending they don't know what I'm talking about. They play the victim, trying to turn the situation back on me. But I'm done playing their games. I'm done letting them walk all over us. I tell them again, louder this time. Apologize to Lena. When she tries to lie to my face, I don't think, I just act. My hand connects with her cheek in a sharp, stinging slap that echoes through the room. Hitting her, it felt sickening. My heart is pounding so hard, I feel like I might throw up. It's a physical manifestation of a darkness I've tried to bury. For a split second, I feel like I've become just like my mother. Cruel, violent, controlled by a rage I can't contain. But then I look at Lena. I see the shock and the hope in her eyes, and I know that I had to do it. I had to protect her. The bullies are on the floor now, sobbing and begging for mercy. They're terrified of the woman standing before them. Lena tries to tell me she's fine, that I shouldn't have made a scene. She's still trying to protect me, even now. But I'm not okay. Seeing her suffer like this because of me is the one thing I cannot endure. I pull her into my arms, the tears finally breaking through. What is going on here? The voice is deep, commanding, and it cuts through the chaos like a knife. Marcel stands in the doorway, his presence filling the room. He looks at the crying maids, at my bandaged hands, and finally at me. The air in the room shifts. The bullies scramble to their feet, their eyes darting between us, looking for a way out. I don't pull away from Lena. I stand my ground, my eyes meeting his with a defiance I didn't know I possessed. My hands are still shaking, the adrenaline slowly fading into a dull ache. I wait for his judgment, for the cold words that will surely follow. But he just looks at me, and for the first time, I see something in his eyes that isn't coldness. It's an understanding that terrifies me more than his anger ever could.
The moon hangs cold and indifferent over a silent estate, a witness to a night that should be filled with celebration, but is instead heavy with isolation. Inside, the grand hallways of the Delmark estate are just as frozen. I stand before a door that should lead to a beginning, yet it feels like the start of another long ending. I waited. I always waited. But the silence in this hallway is a familiar weight, a reminder of the distance between me and the man I just married. Tonight was supposed to be my wedding night, the moment our union was finalized. Yet, as I step into the massive, empty bedroom, the reality of my situation sets in. He hasn't come back. Is he not going to come at all? Even in this new life, the contract between us is a wall I can't seem to climb, no matter how hard I try. I remember his warmth, or what I once desperately believed was warmth, a delusion I clung to in my past life until it eventually broke me. In that life, my devotion ended in blood and betrayal. I can still see the stains of my past self's failures. I sit at my desk, the only sound the rhythmic scratching of a pen against paper, trying to focus on anything but the empty bed behind me. My heart should be breaking, but I have a purpose now that transcends the pain of a neglected wife. Aziel, my son, my everything. I can still feel the ghost of his tiny hand in mine. He is the only reason I returned to this hellish marriage. I have to bring him back to this world. I have to ensure he is born again, no matter the cost to my pride or my heart. So I write, planning for a future that only I know is coming, steeling myself for the role I must play. Then, a heavy, deliberate footfall breaks the silence of the room, vibrating through the floorboards. I freeze as a shadow looms over me. Duke Herden Delmark. I didn't think he would actually show up. He looks at me with those cold, piercing eyes and reminds me that tonight is our wedding night and we are legally bound. His presence is suffocating, a terrifying mixture of the man I once loved and the stranger who eventually abandoned me. I was just waiting, in case, I tell him, trying to keep my voice from trembling under his gaze. When he reaches out to touch my face, his fingers are warm, sending a jolt through me that I desperately want to hate. It's a gentle gesture from a man who, in my memory, was never truly kind. He pulls me into an embrace that feels like a trap, and for a second, my breath hitches. I have to keep my eyes open. I can't let the rhythm of his heart lull me into a false sense of safety again. He says he wants to be with me, but I know the truth. Men like him can share a bed with someone they feel absolutely nothing for. I once lived for these moments, convinced that his eyes saw only me and that his embrace was a sanctuary. I fell for the lie of his affection in an instant, a naive girl who didn't understand the depth of his resentment. But that version of me is dead. I won't be fooled by the heat of his skin or the softness of his words anymore. I stare into the shadows, reminding myself that this is a transaction, not a romance. I endure the night, a silent passenger in my own body, waiting for the dawn to release me. I grip the sheets until my knuckles turn white, forcing myself to stay grounded in the present. Everything I do, every touch I tolerate is for him, for Azil. I'll do anything to see his face again. If I have to share a bed with the man who might have been responsible for my death, then so be it. I can endure this night 100 times over if it means my child gets to live, because I remember how it was before. 2 years before the regression, the neglect was absolute and punishing. The winter was harsh, but the cold inside our carriage was far more cutting than the wind outside. He was always leaving, always finding a reason to be anywhere in the world but by my side. I called out to him, desperate for even a moment of his time, a single look that wasn't filled with disdain. I was heavily pregnant with our child, my body exhausted, and my spirit slowly breaking under the weight of his absence. He had been gone for over half a year, 6 months of silence, while I struggled with the fear of becoming a mother alone.
His face was a mask of icy indifference, as if my very existence was a burden he was forced to endure for the sake of politics. I was a princess of the empire and a duchess, yet I was little more than a beggar for my husband's attention. Even when we were trapped in the same small carriage, the emotional distance between us was an unbridgeable chasm. I had so much I wanted to say to him, so many grievances I had rehearsed in my head every night. But when the moment came, my voice failed me. I was hurt that he never once replied to the letters I sent him. I tried to bridge the gap, telling him how strong the baby's kicks were, hoping to spark some fatherly instinct. I offered him a chance to feel the movement, to connect with his son for the first time. He refused. His cold dismissal was like a physical blow to my chest. The rejection stung more than the winter wind outside. I was completely alone in my marriage. He left the estate again almost immediately, disappearing into the snow-covered horizon without a second thought. He treated our home like a temporary stop, and me like a stranger he was obligated to visit. I stood there, clutching my stomach, watching the man I loved walk away from the family he never wanted. He didn't look back, not once. He just kept moving toward a life that didn't include me. I was desperate for any scrap of connection, anything to keep me from drowning in my own loneliness. I begged him to give the child a name before he left, Diana if it's a girl, and Asil if it's a boy. He agreed, but his voice was devoid of any warmth or excitement. He was just checking a box. I forced a smile through my tears, grateful for the bare minimum of his attention. It was the first and only thing he had ever given our child, a name. He was Duke Herden Delmark, the continent's legendary war hero, blessed with the power of the divine beast, and I was Blair Delmark, an imperial princess who was nothing more than a political sacrifice for the state. Our marriage was built on a foundation of bad blood and ancient rivalries between our families. I knew the truth. His constant departures weren't about duty, they were merely an excuse to avoid being near me. On our wedding day, we looked like a dream, but the reality was a nightmare of resentment and silence. The Delmark Duchy and the imperial family were bound by a history of conflict that no ceremony could erase. I knew he resented me, but I was so afraid of being alone that I chose to stay and suffer. I waited through the snow and the long, lonely months of my pregnancy, hoping he would change his mind. Asiel was eventually born in a cold, quiet room. Herden never returned for the birth. When he finally did come back, half a year had passed since our son was born. I thought maybe, seeing his child, things would be different. But he didn't come back alone. He arrived holding the hand of another woman, a woman with hair of dazzling silver. The news I had been waiting for finally arrived through the frantic calls of the servants. My husband, the Duke, was finally coming home after months away at war. For a moment, all the cold nights and the loneliness of my pregnancy felt like they might finally be worth it. I looked down at our son, Aziel, the living proof of the bond we were supposed to share.
He had his father's eyes, a constant reminder of the man who had been absent for his first breath. I told myself that today would be different, that once he saw our son, everything would change. Half a year had passed since Herden left for the north, and despite the birth of his heir, he had never once returned. I knew he still resented me for who I was, the daughter of his enemy, a princess sold to him in a political deal. I spent so many nights crying myself to sleep, wondering if I would ever be more than a trophy of war to him. But as I watched his carriage approach from the window, I clutched Asiel tighter. He couldn't hate me forever, not when we had this beautiful child between us. He had become a father, and I a mother. Surely that title carried more weight than our past grievances. I wanted us to build a real family, even if it meant starting from the fragments of a broken contract. I believed that once he saw his own face reflected in Asiel, his heart would finally soften. But when the carriage doors opened and I stepped out to greet him, my heart stopped. He wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a woman with hair like starlight, her hand resting comfortably near his. The whispers from the servants started instantly. Who was she? Why did they arrive together? Her name was Miela Elias, a name that would soon become a thorn in my side. Herden introduced her with a pride he never showed me, claiming she had assisted his knights during a beast attack. He spoke of her as an exceptional talent, a priestess who had saved his men when all hope was lost. But as I looked at her, I didn't see a savior. I saw a woman who looked at my husband with an intimacy I could only dream of. She was to stay at the estate, a guest of honor, while I, the Duchess, felt like a ghost in my own home. The gossip spread like wildfire through the hallways, reaching me even when I tried to hide. They said the Duke was finally falling in love, but it wasn't with his wife. I forced myself to remain calm, to keep my chin up despite the suffocating weight of their stares. They whispered that a beautiful priestess was a much better match for him than the daughter of his enemy. Summer bled into autumn, and the distance between Herden and me only grew wider. By the time the first frost of winter arrived, I felt as desolate as the landscape outside. He was always busy with work, or so he claimed, never once seeking me out to ask how I was. Even when I tried to visit him, I was turned away at the door like a common solicitor. Eventually, the hope I had been nursing began to wither, replaced by a dull, aching acceptance. If there was one mercy, it was that he occasionally showed interest in our son. He would watch Asiel from a distance, a flicker of something human crossing his cold features. With Asiel's first birthday approaching, I decided to bet everything on that faint glimmer of interest. I would ask him to spend just one day with us, away from the estate, as a real family. I practiced my words, trying to sound composed and not like the desperate woman I had become. When I reached his office, I noticed the door was slightly ajar, a rare lapse in his security. I reached out, my hand trembling as I prepared to knock and ask for the one thing I wanted most. But through the crack in the door, I saw a sight that shattered whatever was left of my heart. There, in the dim light of the office, Herden held her. He held Miela with a tenderness he had never once offered me. His expression wasn't cold or indifferent. It was filled with a raw, agonizing passion. I stood frozen, watching the man I loved give everything I had ever wanted to another woman. Every sacrifice I made, every tear I shed in silence felt like a cruel joke in that moment. I heard her whisper to him, her voice filled with a devotion that I could never compete with. He pulled her closer, his hands tangling in her hair as if she were the only anchor he had in this world. She told him it felt like a dream, and he didn't pull away. He didn't deny her. I turned and ran, my footsteps silent on the heavy rugs, but the sound of my heart breaking was deafening. I couldn't hear their I love yous anymore. I just needed to get away from the truth I had finally seen. A few days later, on the morning of Asiel's birthday, a servant brought the final blow. The Duke's schedule was delayed. He wouldn't be coming. He told me to celebrate our son's first year of life without him. The servants did their best to make the day special, surrounding us with smiles and forced cheer. There were heaps of gifts from the vassals, expensive toys and fine silks that meant nothing to a child craving a father's touch. To everyone else, it looked like a perfect birthday party, fit for the heir of a duchy. But I stood by the window, looking at the empty space where a husband and father should have been. Asiel was too young to know he was being neglected, but I felt the weight of it for both of us. When the sun finally set, I carried him back to his room, my voice shaking as I whispered how wonderful he was. I laid him in his crib, watching his eyes flutter shut, innocent of the storm brewing in my soul. He was so small, so perfect, and yet he wasn't enough to make his father stay. I promised him that I would be enough, that I would love him enough for two people. Outside, the snow continued to fall, burying the estate in a silent, suffocating white. The day was over, and the realization that Herden truly didn't care settled deep into my bones. I had waited for him until the very last second, a fool until the very end. Asiel stirred in his sleep, a soft sound that brought a fresh wave of tears to my eyes. I felt a single tear escape, trailing down my cheek as I looked at the child who deserved so much more than a broken home. I walked back to my own room, the silence of the mansion feeling like a physical weight against my chest. I caught my reflection in the mirror, pale, hollow, and utterly defeated. I let the tears fall freely then, the sob I had been holding back finally tearing its way out of my throat. Asiel was at an age where he needed love from both parents, and I had failed to give him that. I hated myself for loving a man so heartless, for tying my life to a shadow that refused to see me. If only I could go back in time, I would never have let myself fall for him. I would have protected my heart. Suddenly, the sound of a heavy footstep behind me made me freeze. I turned, expecting to see Herden, hoping for an apology, but it wasn't my husband. It was a dark figure with a blade, and as the steel gleamed in the moonlight, my only thought was that I wished I could start over. The silence of the manor is heavy, a precursor to the nightmare about to unfold. Panic surges through me, cold and sharp, as I realize the person approaching isn't Herden. My heart hammers against my ribs, each breath a struggle as the reality of the threat sets in. I can't even let out a scream. If I make a sound, Asiel will wake up, and he'll be in danger too. A masked figure looms in the doorway, a blade glinting with a lethal, predatory intent. I look at my son, so small and innocent, completely unaware that his life is hanging by a thread. Desperation drives me toward the bell rope, my hand trembling as I reach for our only hope. I pull with everything I have, a silent prayer for anyone to hear, for anyone to save my baby. The bells ring out across the servants' quarters, a frantic, clanging alarm in the dead of night. Downstairs, the signal is clear, but time is a luxury we simply don't have. The head maid pauses, confused by the sudden violent ringing at such an impossible hour. The realization hits them all at once. This isn't a request for tea, it's a cry for help. Back in my room, I'm still clinging to that rope, my knuckles white as the assassin closes the distance. The blade finds its mark, a cold finality that steals the air from my lungs as I collapse. A muffled groan escapes me as the world begins to tilt, the ground rushing up to meet my failing body. I hear the frantic footsteps of the maids in the hallway, but their voices feel miles away. The killer stands over me, a shadow of death that has successfully completed its gruesome task. I struggle to keep my eyes open, gasping for air as the light in the room begins to dim. Through the haze of pain, a single thought brings me a flicker of relief. At least Asiel wasn't in here with me. But the relief is short-lived, replaced by an agonizing fear of what will happen to him once I'm gone. I see his face in my mind, his peaceful sleep a stark contrast to the blood pooling around me. The doors burst open, the guards finally arriving to a scene of absolute devastation. My vision fades into a blur of tears and blood, my last breath spent whispering my son's name. Then, the world shatters like glass, time itself bending under the weight of my grief and regret. I gasp, my eyes flying open as I'm pulled back from the brink of the void. Asiel! I scream, sitting bolt upright, my hand clutching at a heart that should have stopped beating. I look down at my hands, expecting to see them stained red, but they are clean and trembling. I'm in a room I haven't seen in years, surrounded by the opulence of the imperial palace. Lena enters, looking younger and entirely too cheerful for the nightmare I just endured. I demand to know where my son is, but the look of pure confusion on her face stops me cold. She tilts her head, asking if Asiel is perhaps the name of a stray cat from the garden. A cold, hollow dread settles in my chest. She doesn't know him. She has no idea who I'm talking about. I stare at her, the reality of the situation beginning to pierce through my shock. This isn't the villa where I lived as a neglected wife. This is the home I left long ago. I ask her the date, my voice trembling as I wait for an answer that will change everything. Lena calls me Your Highness, a title I haven't used since before my marriage to the Duke. She tells me I'm not even married yet, and the words feel like a physical blow to the stomach. I ask her how old I am, my mind racing to catch up with the impossible truth. I'm 20 years old. My coming-of-age ceremony was only 2 months ago. It hits me with the force of a tidal wave. I have returned to a time 3 years before Asiel was born. The palace gardens are just as beautiful as I remember, but they feel like a golden cage now. I find myself seated at a formal meal, the tension in the air thick enough to choke on. Across from me sit the people who dictated my life, blissfully unaware of the future I've already lived. I look at them and realize this is the exact moment my previous life began to unravel. I try to keep my composure, but the memories of my death are still fresh, bleeding into the present. A voice cuts through my thoughts, calling my name with a cold, practiced authority. I look up, my eyes wide as I come face to face with the Empress Dowager. She's watching me, her gaze sharp and calculating, searching for any sign of weakness. Katrina Ardell, the woman who traded my happiness for political gain without a second thought. And beside her, Emperor Ivan, a man whose ambition was always more important than his sister's life. He cuts into his meal with a precision that mirrors the way he carves up the lives of others. He speaks of my marriage to the Duke of Delmark as if it's a settled matter, a simple transaction. I remember this conversation. I remember how I begged and pleaded to be spared from this fate. Ivan tells me the discussions are finished. He's already set the trap for the Duke. He reminds me of my duty as a princess, a role that has only ever brought me pain. He expects me to be a submissive pawn, to accept my lot in life without a word of protest. They tell me Herden is the best groom I could ask for, a war hero desired by every woman in the empire. In the past, I stood my ground, declaring that I didn't want this marriage, that I deserved more. It was the first time I had ever shown any defiance, a moment of bravery that ultimately led to my ruin. But as I look at them now, I realize that being a princess was never about my choice. I will do it, I say, the words tasting like ash in my mouth as I shock them both with my compliance. I tell them it's their will, so it's only natural that I follow it, hiding the fire burning in my soul. Later, alone in my room, I collapse onto the bed, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I close my eyes, trying to convince myself that the life I lost wasn't just a fever dream. I can still hear Asiel's voice, still feel the warmth of his small body in my arms. Every detail of his face, every laugh, every tear, it's all so incredibly vivid, so painfully real. The memory of him is the only thing keeping me from falling apart in this empty palace. Without him, this reality is a living hell, a world where the most important part of me doesn't exist. I realize that my regression isn't just a second chance for me, it's a mission to save him. Even if I have to repeat every mistake, even if I have to suffer through a loveless marriage again, to hold Asiel once more, I will walk back into the lion's den and marry the man who never loved me. I would do absolutely anything to meet Asiel again. My heart aches for a child who hasn't been born yet, and I'll walk through fire to reach him, even if it means enduring the hollow, pathetic loneliness of that marriage one more time. I will survive the cold bed and the silent halls if it leads me back to my son. There is only one path forward, and I have to take it before the opportunity slips through my fingers. The time for hiding is over. I call for Lena, my voice steady despite the weight of what I'm about to ask. I need her to send a messenger to the Delmark Duchy immediately, requesting an audience. The shock on her face is clear. To her, this isn't just a request, it's a social death wish. The Delmarks are our enemies, not our allies. She can't understand why I'd want to seek out the man I've spent my entire life avoiding. To everyone else, I'm just running toward my own executioner, but I can't afford to be afraid anymore. I watch her leave, knowing I've just set a series of irreversible events into motion. The trap is being set. Lena's confusion is justified. In her eyes, the Duke and I are on opposite sides of a blood-soaked history that no marriage contract can fix.
Even just a few months ago, I couldn't even look him in the eye at the imperial banquets. I was a ghost, and he was the man who haunted my family's legacy. The rift between our families is deeper than mere politics. It's personal, rooted in the sins of our fathers and a decade of silence. For me to reach out now, it's a total reversal of everything the palace believes to be true. It's a gamble that could cost me everything. It all goes back to my father, the late emperor, and the two women who defined his reign and destroyed his peace. There was Esmeralda, the empress and his official wife, a woman of immense status and impeccable poise. And then there was Katrina, the imperial concubine, my mother, a woman whose beauty was seen as a threat to the established order. Because the empress had been unable to bear a child for several years, my mother was brought in to fulfill a biological duty the crown demanded. She was of Romany origin, a woman with no noble backing or influence in a court that thrived on lineage and ancient names.
But everything changed the moment she gave birth to a son, Ivan. The balance of power shifted in a heartbeat. Suddenly, she wasn't just a concubine, she was the mother of the future emperor, and the opportunists flocked to her side like vultures. A fierce, silent power struggle broke out between the two women, quickly escalating into a political conflict that tore the empire apart. I was caught in the middle, a child born of a rivalry that I didn't yet understand, loved by one and resented by the court. Yet, remarkably, the empress didn't cast me aside. She looked at me with eyes that held no malice. Despite the poison of the court, she treated me with a kindness I didn't deserve. She saw a child, not a rival's offspring. They say Empress Esmeralda truly cherished me, even though I was the daughter of her greatest political enemy. She was the mother I actually knew. But that warmth was snuffed out in a single, horrific night that changed the course of history forever. A fire tore through the Empress's palace. She didn't make it out, and I was found barely alive, my memories scorched away by the trauma and the heat. My father demanded answers. He dug through the ashes, desperate to find someone to blame for the tragedy that had nearly killed his daughter. The evidence they found was damning, but even as a child, it felt too convenient, too perfectly placed to be real. All circumstantial signs pointed to the Empress herself, suggesting she had started the fire in a final, desperate act of spite. Her own family, the Delmarks, screamed of her innocence, but their cries were silenced by imperial decree. The truth was buried with her. In the end, the woman who had been a second mother to me was buried as a traitor to the crown she had served. And the only remaining heir to her name, her nephew, is the man I'm now calling to my side, the one man who truly remembers her, Duke Herden Delmark, the man who has every reason to want the imperial family destroyed for what we did to his aunt. My servants whispered that our marriage is a heartless move by the emperor to further humiliate the duke and keep his family under control. They think I'm being sacrificed to a man who will surely despise me for the blood in my veins. They see me as a lamb being led to the slaughter. They expect me to be trembling in fear, dreading the moment his carriage pulls up and my new life as a prisoner begins. But for the first time in years, I feel a sense of clarity. I'm not the victim anymore. I am the architect of my own destiny. Outside, the Duke's carriage arrives. The tension in the air is thick enough to choke on as the palace prepares for his arrival. His aide grumbles about the emperor's lack of shame, seeing this marriage as nothing more than a calculated insult to the Delmark name. He sees me as a parasite, sent to absorb the newfound prestige and war-won glory for the benefit of a failing throne. He warns the Duke to be careful, convinced that I'm just another imperial puppet sent to spy on him. But as they enter the palace grounds, the Duke remains silent, his intentions hidden behind a mask of cold, unreadable iron. He knows the rumors. He knows exactly what everyone thinks of this union, and he doesn't care. He's here for a reason. To his men, I'm the one who hit the jackpot, landing the most eligible bachelor in the empire while I just sat still and waited. They think I'm lucky. They have no idea that I'm the one walking into the lion's den by choice, and I'm not bringing a shield. I wait for him, my heart hammering against my ribs, but my gaze is steady. I won't let him see me falter for even a second. I remember avoiding him before. I remember the paralyzing fear, but that Blair is dead, buried under the weight of a second chance. Every step I take toward him is a step toward securing my child's future. This is for a seal. Everything is for him. I have to ensure this marriage happens. I have to make him see that I'm his only ally in a palace full of enemies. The doors open, and there he is, the legendary war hero, towering and formidable, carrying the weight of his family's pride. I can't leave even the slightest possibility that he won't become my husband. I need his name. I need his power. I thank him for making time to meet me. I keep my voice soft and refined, playing the part of the perfect, obedient princess he expects. He offers a formal greeting, but his eyes are like ice, searching mine for any sign of the imperial treachery he's grown to expect. He takes my hand, a gesture that should be romantic but feels more like a cold, calculated challenge. I can feel the weight of his gaze, the unspoken accusations of a decade-long grudge burning behind his blue eyes. But I don't flinch. I let him see that I'm not the fragile girl who lost her mind and her memories in the fire. I sit across from him, the air between us crackling with a decade of resentment and the ghosts of our shared past. He assumes I'm here because I have no choice, that I'm just a pawn following my brother's orders to marry a man I hate. I tell him straight out, I have no intention of rejecting this marriage. I see the flicker of surprise in his eyes, but I'm not asking for a lifetime. I propose a deal. We maintain this marriage for exactly 1 year, no more. After that year, I will grant him a divorce, taking all the blame upon myself so his reputation remains untarnished. I promise him that I won't cling and I won't bother him with trivialities like love or affection. This is business. His eyes narrow. He wasn't expecting a business proposal from the princess everyone thinks is a shell of a person. I have his attention now. Then I play my final card. If he accepts, I will give him what he's truly wanted for 10 long years. I will help him uncover the truth behind the palace fire, the truth that will clear his aunt's name and bring the real traitors to light. The Empress's palace fire incident from 10 years ago. It's a scar on the heart of the empire that refuses to fade, a night that changed everything for those who survived it. Blair offers the one thing she knows he wants. If he accepts her proposal, she'll cooperate fully to uncover the truth of what really happened that night. Herden's reaction is a cold, cynical smirk. He's heard enough lies to last a lifetime, especially from a princess who has spent a decade hiding behind silence. To him, her sudden willingness to talk isn't an act of bravery, it's a calculated move. He wonders where she suddenly found the nerve to bring this up. His mind drifts back 10 years. He was just a boy, desperate and alone, buried under the weight of a family name that had become a curse. He had begged for help, his voice trembling as he pleaded for someone to believe in his aunt's innocence. He had looked to her, the only one he thought might understand, begging her to clear his aunt's name. But the girl he saw then was cold, distant, and seemingly indifferent to the ruin of his family. Her response had been simple and devastating. She claimed she didn't remember anything. He had fallen to his knees, the weight of her betrayal feeling more piercing than the fire itself. He knew she was lying, choosing her mother's side over the truth. Now, 10 years later, that resentment still burns. He looks at her and sees the same girl who watched his life fall apart without blinking. Blair takes a calm sip of tea, her movements graceful and unbothered by the tension radiating from him. He asks why she would even want this marriage. If she just wants to leave the palace, why not marry someone who would actually cherish her? The word love hangs in the air between them, heavy and hollow. It's a concept that feels foreign in this cold room. She doesn't even look up from her cup. Her gaze is fixed on the liquid, as if searching for something she lost long ago. She states it plainly. She doesn't believe in love. It's a vain illusion, a promise of eternity that never actually exists. Her preference is a relationship with clear boundaries, a beginning and an end that everyone understands from the start. She figured a man like the Duke, driven by duty and shadowed by his own secrets, would be the perfect partner for such a deal. For a moment, the mask slips, and he sees a flicker of the girl he once knew, before the fire and the lies changed them both. He remembers a younger Blair, full of dreams about traveling the wide world and leaving the capital behind. She had been so vibrant then, her eyes full of a wonder that has long since been extinguished. The memory is sharp and painful, a reminder of what was lost in the smoke of the palace fire. He watches her closely, searching for any sign of that girl. He had no intention of refusing the emperor's order anyway, but this makes it interesting. The marriage is a tool for him as well. It grants him the permission he needs to reinforce his military forces, a necessity for his survival. His forces were cut in half under the pretext of treason. To protect the northern border, he needs this power reversal. If he can use the princess to find out the truth and then secure a clean divorce, there couldn't be a better outcome. She stands to take her leave, the business concluded. The contract is set, and their fates are officially intertwined. She pauses at the door, a sudden thought crossing her mind, but she hesitates. He looks back, waiting, but she decides against it. Some questions are better left unasked. She clenches her hands, her knuckles white. The weight of her secrets is a physical burden she carries alone. She knows the current Herden wouldn't give her the answer she truly needs anyway. They are both too guarded for honesty. She whispers his name to herself, a soft sound in the quiet of the room. The question that haunts her is simple and terrifying. In that other life, was he the one who killed her? The day before the wedding, she finds herself at a grave, seeking a peace that has eluded her for years. She lays down flowers for the Empress, the woman who was a mother to her in spirit, if not in blood. She wonders if the Empress is angry with her for trying to regain her memories now, after playing innocent for so long. She was scared to find the truth when she was young. No matter who was right, she was destined to lose a mother. In her past life, she tried to face it for Herden's sake, but the effort only destroyed her. It ruined her health and left her fragile, a shell of the woman she was supposed to be. She remembers how he looked at her then, with pity and guilt, as if her presence was a constant reminder of his own failures. He told her to just sit still, to do nothing, just as she always had. It was a command disguised as care, but she realizes now that nothing will change if all she ever does is run away from the shadows. A servant approaches, interrupting her thoughts. The Empress Dowager is waiting for her. Blair steels herself. In this life, she will face the truth and move forward, leaving behind the past she so deeply regrets. The confrontation is immediate and violent. A sharp slap echoes through the hallway as her mother's hand finds her cheek. The Empress Dowager is livid. She demands to know how Blair could visit that woman the day before her wedding. She screams that she is Blair's mother, the one who endured the pain of birth and years of sacrifice. Blair takes the blow in silence, the sting of the slap less painful than the words that follow it. Her mother's love has always been a weapon, used to shape her into a tool for the imperial family's power. She was taught to be jealous and envious of any woman who was truly loved, for love was a currency she was never given. Since she was a child, she was put under strict management, taught that her only value was in being beautiful and desirable. She learned that to be loved, she had to endure. If she was perfect, her mother wouldn't hate her, and the maids wouldn't be punished. She played the part, smiling and nodding while everyone looked at her as a pretty ornament for the court. But everything changed when she held her own child, Azil. In his small, innocent face, she saw what love was actually supposed to be. She realized that if her mother truly loved her, she would have cared about her daughter's happiness, not just her utility. It breaks her heart to admit it, but the realization is a necessary step toward her freedom. She was raised to be a pillar of support for the family her brother and mother built, a sacrifice at the altar of their ambition. She looks her mother in the eye and asks the question she's held back for years. Since when did she actually care? The servants gasp, shocked by the princess's sudden defiance. The air in the room turns ice cold. Her mother's face contorts with rage. She sees Blair not as a daughter, but as a piece of property that is finally talking back. She mocks the idea of Blair being a pillar of support, her voice dripping with a venom that no longer has the power to wound. Her mother clenches her fist, ready to strike again, unable to handle a truth she can't control. Blair stands tall, finally driving a nail into her mother's heart. She is no longer the insolent child they can manipulate. She turns and walks away, the sound of her heels clicking against the floor, marking the end of an era. To move forward, she must leave behind the past where she was blind to the reality of her own life. It's heartbreaking, and yet somehow relieving. This is the final end of a terribly bitter, unrequited love for a mother who never truly was one loved her back.